Brandon.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman.
Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Monday morning to each and every one of you. We welcome you to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Tom Brenneman with a cast of thousands right here in the studio and in the chat. But look who is back in the saddle today. Our main man, Casey McAllister. Welcome back, young man. Your first day in the saddle. As a happily married man, fresh off your honeymoon, give us a full report.
It was a great time. I loved it. Loved every minute of it. It was beautiful. Best day of my life. It was exactly what we all had hoped for. So I'm happy to be back. During my honeymoon, Ellie got called up. So maybe I need to go back to Florida and CES will get called up. Maybe we can work something out with the office, do something about that.
That's a good point.
I think we ought to have an entire off-the-bench trip back down to where you were, just around Destin, Florida, right? That's pretty close to the Panhandle. Weather's really nice there. A little northern Florida action, right?
Right. Yeah. So the beaches there are white sands.
Yep.
And I don't know if anyone's ever been to a white sand beach, but they're very soft.
Yep.
It's very soft sand. And the water was clear. You could see all the way down to your feet.
Yep.
You could see all the fish swimming around you. So you could go out there every morning and just get on a pair of goggles and do, not snorkel, but you could pseudo snorkel.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a great, relaxing time. And I still got to watch the show on the beach, which was a lot of fun.
Well, I tell you, there are tens of thousands all over the United States and all over the globe sitting on beaches, tuned into Off the Bench in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
There's a fake Tom Brenneman in the chat today.
We thought it was you.
It's not me, but that's okay. I mean, if that's what someone wants to do and join the chat, I mean, you know, we're not welcoming. I mean, we're welcoming to all. Sir Boy Wonder says, welcome back, Casey. And by the hype. That is all Sir Boy Wonder has written for a week. By the hype.
By the hype.
I mean, it's like his keyboard is stuck.
Well, I think after your don't buy the hype, he's just complete opposite. He's not listening to you at all.
You know how you can create shortcuts on an iPhone, Tom? You just type one thing and then it just populates an entire message. That's definitely what he's doing with this.
Definitely.
Because he's out and about. I mean, you know he's working. He's a technology specialist. And so he's bouncing around. Paul, good morning.
Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing great. You've got your front runner Reds garb on.
I see.
I'm
going to throw
that before
I'm throwing a flag on that.
Showed up.
I'm throwing a flag on that. I've been wearing this all season. In fact, I've been wearing it so much that my family told me last week that I started to not wear it to the Reds game because I've worn it to every game I've been to, and they were like, "Well, you're not wearing your Reds polo down to the stadium?" I said, "Well, you know what? Thought I'd change it up. No, put it back on. Here we go."
Okay, Elliot. What's going on?
It's great. It's a great morning, Monday morning. Weather, not so great, but the vibes are high, Tom. Beating the Cardinals 2 out of 3 in St. Louis. I feel like that doesn't happen very much. Hasn't happened recently. So I'm very happy, very excited right now.
And Jacob, good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning to you. Yeah,
good
it's
weekend?
Good weekend. No complaints from me.
Got your TCU colors on there?
I do.
I am proudly wearing my TCU pullover here today because they are the only university, the only one. My daughter, who's a TCU student, reminded me of this yesterday. TCU, the only school to go to the college football playoff, to reach the men's NCAA basketball tournament, and now to reach the College World Series in baseball. That is getting it done.
Elite athletic institution.
Elite. And it's because they have a president, or they call him a chancellor, that is an Ohio guy, Cleveland, Ohio guy. He understands the importance of athletics at that higher learning institution. Go Horned Frogs. All right, we come your way Monday through Friday, 10 to 12.
P.
And that's Eastern Time. You can join us on YouTube, the Chatterbox Sports page. Please do so, or you can join us in podcast form. Just search Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman. You're dialed in. All in all, as Elliot mentioned, a really good weekend for the Redlegs. And let's be honest now. When the season began and you saw a 3-game series in St. Louis, you're thinking, okay, how about just one win? Just don't get swept. But my, oh my, how expectations are changing. The Cardinals stink, plain and simple. I mean, they stink. Only the Nationals and the Rockies have a worse record in the National League. So the Reds take it to them. They win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. It began Friday night, they lost. But then comes Andrew Abbott, another one, brought up from the minor leagues. Left-hander, his second major league start, and just like the first one, didn't allow a single run in nearly 6 innings of work. Reds won at 8-4. Then yesterday, the return of Hunter Green. He missed his last start with a hip injury. They backed it up a week. Goes 5 1/3 innings, allows 3 runs, struck out 9, got a no decision. And look, the Ellie De La Cruz thing is just in high gear. 2 hits on base yesterday 4 times and scored the go-ahead run on a ground ball, flashing his blazing speed. He had joked the day before that he's the fastest man in the world. The Reds win the game 4-3. Is he the fastest man in the world?
He's the fastest man in baseball. I know that. It was incredible. Well, we'll talk more about that in a minute because we have the highlight and everything else to bring up. So
all right, okay.
We'll get more into that in a minute.
Tonight, the road trip continues in Kansas City. And, boy, you talk about stink. Holy Moses. Reading up on the Royals, brutal. Luke Weaver against Zach Greinke tonight in the series opener. The TV voice of the Royals, our good friend Ryan Lefebvre, will join us at 11 o'clock to preview the series. Reds are 4 back. They're 4 games under 500. Kansas City, 18-47. We know their pain. The Reds were there last year. Andrew McCutchen picked up his 2,000th career hit yesterday, one of just 291 players all time to reach that mark, and the 5th among active players, behind Miguel Cabrera, Joey Votto, Nelson Cruz, and Elvis Andrus. The Mets owner, Stephen Cohen, comes out in a long interview and says no major changes are coming. He's not changing the manager, Buck Showalter, the general manager, not the players, nope. Despite the fact that the Mets have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball history, and yet they are one of the worst teams in baseball right now. 4 games under 500, a whopping 9.5 back in the National League East. FC Cincinnati. Starting to wonder if they're a good road team. We know they're really good at home. I'm starting to wonder how good they are on the road. They played to a 1-1 draw in Vancouver on Saturday night. Now FCC still has the best record in the MLS. They've only lost once, won 12 times, 4 ties. The team doesn't play again until June 21st. Why are they waiting that long to play again? Anybody know the answer to that question?
Might be a bye week. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they've played a lot of games here as a player.
I think it's just an off week.
Casey, you're the big soccer guy around here. Do you think that it's a legitimate question that, look, most teams in most sports are better at home, but they look like a different team on the road than at home. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, I think they've had, out of the whole season, they've had their worst games away. That is for sure. And I think.
But even still, they've only lost one.
They've only lost one.
And I hate to pull this card. But
go ahead. You're going to pull it anyway, so go ahead.
They probably should have won that. They were winning 1-0 in the 89th minute, and then they got called for a penalty, and it ended up as a draw. So I mean, they were right there. They were 2 minutes from winning the match. But anyway, go ahead.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. I mean, it's
not like they played to a 4-4 draw, and it's like they're conceding 4 times.
Now, despite that, they didn't play great that game.
No.
Even though they probably should have won, they didn't play great. But that's kind of like the makings of some of these good teams in a lot of sports. Even though you play bad, you still find ways to win.
That's right.
And they they just kind of got unlucky with the penalty at the 89th minute. That's what it really boils down to.
Casey, I got to interrupt you not interrupt them, but
Go ahead.
I gotta ask you something here real quick. Alex Wallace in the chat points out Alex McAllister. Does that feel weird to read for the first time in the chat?
Yeah, that is very strange.
Okay. All right.
I've not seen I've seen it written out, but I've not seen other people address my now wife as Alex McAllister.
Wow.
There you go.
So that was
It'll take some getting used to.
that's something to get used to.
The player formerly known as Mouse Cop says last week was the worst week in the history of Chatterbox.
Ooh.
With
I
Reed
don't
in
know
the
about
producer's seat.
I do feel like I'm back home over here. It was a stressful week sitting to my left.
guys-
I just always it was fine. It went fine. The microphone levels were a little off. The show the like when I would hit go live at 9:58, for some reason it just wouldn't go live till 10:02. There were things that were just I was always sitting on pins and needles, Casey, and it feels good to be back home.
It's all right. It's okay.
We're here.
We are
Rocking
back
and rolling.
We are back to normal. You guys did great while I was gone. I sat and watched every morning. Made sure you guys were up and rolling. You
One
guys
morning,
were
if we
fine.
hadn't called you, we would not have been up and rolling.
Yeah, that was.
It was tough. We had some problems that we had never seen in the studio before. The cameras weren't working. The internet wasn't connecting. Nothing was going right.
Yeah.
We had never seen 3 different problems happen in the studio, and all of them happened on the same morning at about 9:51. Casey got that call with the bedhead.
Yeah. I mean, luckily I hadn't already gone to the beach yet. I was getting ready to walk out the door. I'm like, Alex, can we hang on a second?
Oh,
Sure,
tough.
she was thrilled about that.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
All right. Elsewhere, the NBA Finals continue tonight. Denver a chance to wrap it up. It would be the first title ever in the franchise history of the Denver Nuggets. They lead Miami 3-1. The game is in Denver, so trying to wrap it up at home. Tip-off set for 8:30. And did you see the ending of the Canadian Open? Can we roll this, please?
We have it all.
This was unbelievable, right? One of the greatest moments, they say, in Canadian sports history. 72-foot eagle putt. This is unbelievable to win.
In with the maple leaf flag.
This is Nick Taylor. Look at this putt.
Good pace.
This is to win.
Are you serious?
Bang, bang.
Oh my goodness! Glorious and free.
The crowd went ballistic, and understandably so. As Taylor, that was the 4th hole of a playoff to win the country's, I beg your pardon, golf championship. He is the first native Canadian, as we'll scroll this up here, Paul, a little bit, first native Canadian to win since 1954. But here's another little nugget. The player that won it in 1954 was born in England and then moved to Canada, became a citizen of that country. The last Canadian-born player to win the Canadian Open was in 1914. They asked him afterwards, so he sinks a 72-foot putt, celebrates, throws a putter in the air, whole 9 yards, right? And they asked him afterwards when he got into the press conference room, what do you remember? He says, I totally blacked out. I have no idea what I did when the putt went in. I can't wait to go back and watch it. There's more to this story, which we will cover later, about what happened in the ensuing celebration, if you didn't see this. So, it's pretty funny, actually. We have Tim McGee coming up here shortly, former Bengal great, to talk about minicamp and how times have changed and how Zach Taylor, he said through a lot of studies, backing off his players. He doesn't want a lot of – they're going to be, if not the least number of hours on the field during OTAs and minicamp of any team in the league. They're right there. And Zach Taylor, has created a culture down there. This is what he thinks is the right way to do it. It's hard to argue with him. They've won back-to-back AFC North titles. And, of course, they played in back-to-back AFC championship games. But minicamp is a little bit different animal altogether because it's mandatory. You have to be there. The OTAs, for the veteran guys, if you show up, great. If you don't, some other guys, they have an injury, they don't have to be there. As we've talked a lot about Jonah Williams in particular. But now you got to be there because this is the last 3 or 4 days where it's mandatory, and then you basically get the rest of June and all of July off until training camp starts. So, Tim McGee ready to go? We got him dialed in?
Yep.
All right, here he is. Former Bengal great, friend of the program. We love Tim McGee. Nobody tells it like it is like the man from Cleveland, Ohio, via the Tennessee Volunteers. Your Volunteers, Tim, I mean, they got it going on down there. Every time I open up the internet, it sounds like they're signing more and more big-time college recruits. Are they going to finally get some consistency back down there again?
You know, I hope so, considering we had a phenomenal year, considering where we came from. But the football program is on the upswing, and as long as it continues to stream up, we have one of the best facilities in the country, and we have one of the best stadiums in the country, and we have the best color combination in the country, and we have the best voice in John Ward, the late great John Ward, saying it's football time. And everyone uses that, but they cut off that in Tennessee. So, you know, he should have trademarked that, and I'm pretty sure his family would have been really, really extremely happy.
One other thing I want to ask you about, which I've never gotten your thoughts on. What do you think about what's going on with Deion Sanders there at Colorado? Because, you know, there's been so much made about roster turnover. He's running guys off. He's bringing guys in. He was in the news again this morning where, you know, there are players, one kid from Florida, one kid from Michigan, a wide receiver from Florida, a defensive lineman from Michigan. These guys are being recruited by Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, all of them, and Deion lands 2 more 4-star guys. What do you think of what he's doing out there?
You know what? There's 2 perspectives I have on that. Number one, let's go with the positive first. Consider he's turned the program around as far as hype is concerned. He's brought a lot of notoriety. He's brought, you know, a tremendous amount of talent, and he continues to do that. And in order to have a winning program, you're going to need talent. You're going to need the horses. And whatever he's doing it within the framework of the rules, and what his likeness, of course, is a huge advantage for him. You know, however, you know, if you're the kids there and if you're the university, I don't know if this is good for the spirit of the game. I don't know if this is good for college sports, but you know, I guess there's a cost for success even at the college level, and he's bringing more of a free agent NFL mentality to the University of Colorado, and he's changed a lot of things. And you know, but one can question. So, you know, for every pro, there's a con. One can question. You know, he makes comments about the African American schools or HBCs and how they didn't have but one player drafted and they're not getting the notoriety. But, you know, you left it. So, you know, he should, in my opinion, receive some criticism for that because, you know, in order to fix it, you should have been there. You should have stayed there. However, you know, he felt like most coaches do. You know, they keep a mirror in their face and they watch out for, you know, yours truly first and first, second, third, fourth, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there's some positives at the University of Colorado. I know the fan base got to be excited. The students got to be excited. But ultimately, they haven't played a game yet. So they're going to have to win some football games in order to get the respect that they feel they deserve.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. All right, I want to get to now your recollections of let's start from a perspective of a rookie. So these guys that the Bengals drafted, okay, and we've talked a lot about them, whether it's Murphy, the defensive lineman, Brown, the running back, the 2 receivers, that kind of thing. When you're a rookie and you come into town and you're staying in a hotel and they lay out the schedule for you and you're there for OTAs, can you remember what that was like the first time you walked into an OTA as a rookie and the way you felt? Were you confident? Were you nervous? Were you scared? Were you all the above?
Well, we didn't have official OTAs. We had, you better have your ass here. Those were kind of the underwritten rules. You better be here. I don't as a first round pick. You know, my career the way it started off in being drafted by the Bengals was a little different. I knew I didn't have the pressure, say, if I had gone somewhere and I needed to have instant impact on the football team. I had Eddie Brown and Chris Collinsworth as starters. So, I had a luxury pretty much of learning between two great players, and so I didn't have that pressure. So going into minicamp in particular, it was more of getting acclimated with the NFL speed, getting acclimated with the players, your teammates, the whole system. And for me, again, another thing that was great, the great Walt Harris, who coached me at the University of Tennessee, and Bruce Cosler ran and pretty much the very similar offense. So it was more just learning the terminology and like I said, just starting off becoming how do I become a pro? What type of career do I want? Do I want short term, long term? What are my goals? And then you really come into minicamp, quite honestly, and you're looking, go, man, I've heard about this guy and I've heard about that guy, and you go, that guy is really, really good. And then sometimes you go, that guy is overhyped, no doubt about it. And then you just kind of plug from a mental standpoint, you plug yourself in and say, okay, here's where I fit in, and here's where I can grow. I see opportunity here, maybe not there, and kind of get to know the staff a little bit and the ownership. So I don't think it was I wasn't nervous at all. I think it was more of looking at the opportunity and see where I could plug my talents in and feel comfortable.
All right, well, let me take that a step further. I want to get into, we've seen in the college game, as it has evolved, and there are other guys who get credit for it. I think Urban Meyer probably had as much to do with it as anybody, where you're starting to spread guys out a lot, right? Not empty backfield, because in his offense, unlike some of the others, they ran the ball a lot. But nonetheless, you spread them out. And take the kid from Purdue as an example, okay? That's what they're doing. Wide open, a lot of empty backfield stuff. As a receiver, for this guy to be coming in, you mentioned when you walked in, you had Collinsworth and Eddie Brown, who were the starters. These guys who are walking in, these young receivers, they know that the Bengals have Chase, they have Higgins, and they have Boyd. So, start with a playbook. Is it a significant, really significant change? Besides just the verbiage, but from a philosophy of walking from a college program, whether it's Princeton or Purdue or Ohio State or Tennessee, is it a huge taxing difference to learn an NFL offense or this Bengal offense in particular?
No, not at all. You're running pretty much a pro system. There are no more pro college systems anymore. They're intertwined now. What they're doing at Ohio State, here's the funny part, Tom. It used to be frowned upon if a coach from the pros, the NFL, would take anything from the college coaches. It was kind of they looked down on the college coaches as far as what they were doing, because college coaches had to create. They didn't have the talent that the NFL coaches, and I'm talking about as a whole. So I don't think the NFL was much of an adjustment for me in particular, because we ran a very similar system. And nowadays, Zach Taylor at UC, he's probably running plays from UC or philosophies from UC and the Rams and so on and so forth. So the college coaching group has kind of intertwined themselves to kind of think alike. And we always call it a copycat league and all that. And, the success that the Rams had, with Sean McVay, and then everybody, that had a cup of coffee with him was hired as a head coach. And obviously Zach has done a wonderful job, but I don't think they have much adjustments now in spreading and creating matchups. And that's what offenses is all about, is creating matchups. You talk about Chase, you talk about Boyd, and you talk about T. Higgins. You know what you're going to get. The best corner is going to single, and I've been saying this from day one, since T. Higgins was actually drafted. The best corner is not going to cover Jamar Chase. The best corner is going to cover T. Higgins. Why? Because you're going to double Jamar Chase, and then you're going to put your slot corner in there, and you're going to hope for the best with Tyler Boyd. That's what you have to do. And as far as when you look at those philosophies, Tom, how do you attack them? You got to have some stud defensive ends that's limiting the time for the quarterback to really process.
When you look at the wide receivers they brought in, both of these young men, I guess, are just extraordinary athletes. Okay, there are a lot of great athletes. I mean, I think the football players, along with the basketball players, are the best athletes in the world. But these two guys, let me start with a kid from Princeton. And I'm not asking you much about him in particular necessarily because I don't know how much you know about him. But when a guy comes from a program like Princeton, do some people, that are maybe in the NFL that came from Tennessee or came from LSU or came from wherever, do they sort of think, Princeton, are you kidding? Or do they just watch the guy and go, oh, okay, maybe he shouldn't have been at Princeton?
Well, it's so funny because my daughter went to Princeton.
All right, well, you love Princeton then.
So it's funny because you, in the locker room, you do say Princeton, but you got to be very careful because you may be asking the guy for a job, in the distant future. So you know he's going to be smart. So that's going to happen. And I think I played with John Garrett. Yeah, John Garrett or Jason Garrett. John Garrett. And he went to Princeton. And, he was on the team and obviously what him and his brother went on to do. So they have the mindset. You know that. And they're going to pretty much work their behinds off to maximize their talent. So guys like them, they're not going to make mistakes. Coaches are going to absolutely love those guys. No question about it. But you are going to look at them and say, dude, I went to the University of Tennessee. This ain't happening. No, you went, and even though you have the attitude towards everyone, but small colleges, man, come on. This guy can't, he cannot perform me. And yes, but you got to go out and compete, but you do kind of look down on those guys and make them pretty much earn everything they get. And once they earn it, they're just a part of the fraternity.
Okay. Your thoughts on, because look, when you played, the rules were very different, right? I mean, Sam Weiss or anybody else, when you came in for minicamp, there was hitting going on. There was a lot of hitting going on. Now there will be very little, if any, hitting going on. And much has been made about Zach Taylor and his philosophy. And again, it's hard to argue with it. I mean, they've been to back-to-back AFC championship games. But his philosophy compared to most of the NFL is to lighten the load on the players. As a player, I would assume you love it. But is there a part of you as a player that's going, man, maybe we need a little bit of that mixed in?
Here's what I think about that. You have to be very careful because you can't cookie cutter every single player on your roster. And what I mean by that, some players, myself, James Brooks, Eric Thomas, we came in 100% ready to go. Then there was other players I won't name, but they came in pretty much out of shape, so on and so forth. So it's a system where to treat everyone fairly, you don't treat them equally. There has to be where, there's certain individuals that do not train the way the coaches want them to train, and they come in and you hear about them coming in, they're not in shape, they're not ready to play. But I understand and I even agree with, because ultimately what Zach is doing that I think is just absolutely smart. You need your horses in December. And the NFL season, people could not even imagine. It's like being in multiple car accidents in one day. And your body, because you have that S across your chest when you're young, your body's able to recover. But it does take a toll on any player. I don't care if you're 21 all the way to 32. Obviously, the 32 is going to feel the effects much more than the 22-year-old. But Zach is doing a phenomenal job of understanding that a fresh mind and body will help you during the playoff run. You can get there. If you get there, I think that could be the difference in them going to the AFC Championship game opposed to winning the AFC Championship game and going on to the Super Bowl. I think I can't say to you how much I commend him for that philosophy.
Well, the players have clearly all bought in, whether it's, the Sam Hubbards of the world or the Kappas of the world who have played with other teams and that kind of thing. They think it's just phenomenal. And look, again, it's hard to argue and whatever it might be. As a young player, it's the last thing I want to ask you about. You're coming in, or let's even say a free agent player. Now, I know they're very different, but say a Nick Scott that comes in, right? I mean, there's a lot on Scott back there at safety, and the two guys they're replacing. They're starters from a year ago. At the end of the day, what do you want to get out of the next 3 or 4 days of minicamp before you have the long break leading up to training camp?
Mental. Everything's mental. Learning the plays, understanding and getting on the same page. And I'll tell you why that's important, especially on the backside of the Bengals defense. You got rid of Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Those guys, and I always say this, at certain points in times of the game, one, if not both of those guys, they were clearly envisioned of every single player on the football field. So they know how to put players in the right spots. If they see the mistakes, they're able to adjust to it, et cetera, et cetera. Now that you have new guys coming in, you have to utilize this mini camp to make sure that these guys understand the defense. Offense is pretty simple. Offense, you run the 5 route, you run a 5 route. It's just not going to change. Defensively, they've played so well together, and we know how important the Coach Lou has had those guys ready, but they are enjoying themselves. And when you enjoy yourself, Tom, the number one component of that is you don't have guys missing assignments. When you have guys missing assignments, that pisses players off as well as coaches. But if you can't rely on your teammate to be in the right spot at the right time, bad results and bad things happen. And that's what minicamp is for. Minicamp is, they're not going to go out there and run 40s. They're not going to go out there and hit. What they're going to do is they're going to go out there and get on the same page with shorts and walk through and, get a feel for the football team and hopefully stay away from injuries. And that's probably the key right there. Because any football team, Tom, any football team, the Bengals are very talented. Let's use them as an example. One key injury, the Bengals are not very talented. Plain and simple. They can go from we're going to win the AFC or pick to win the AFC North to one injury, and they're not going to win the AFC North. So you have to keep your players fresh and keep them available. And Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tim. Please forgive me.
No, you're fine.
I'm curious. When you said something, though, and it's the last thing I want to ask you, but I've always wondered about this. When you hear that a wide receiver, and you'll hear this frequently, people talking about on the radio, commentators on a game, that the guy's a great route runner. What exactly does that mean? You talked about relying on teammates. I've heard coaches say, look, if this play calls for the wide receiver in the slot to run 5 yards and slant, right, at a certain all the way down to the angle they want you to slant on. That exactly better be the route you run. Not 4 yards, not 7 yards, 5 yards. Is that true?
That is 100% true. When you hear that term, a great route runner, that means he is in the right place at the right time. Early is not good, and late sure is not good. To understand that means the quarterback, it starts with the quarterback, and it pretty much relied heavily upon the offensive line. You can't take extra steps. And again, we talked about this earlier, because those defensive ends and the push up front are not going to allow the quarterback to just go sit back there and pick apart a defense. And the way the game has evolved, it used to be the big clumsy guys were on defense, particularly on the defensive line. But now you have defensive ends running 4.340. So timing is of the essence. And a great route runner is a guy that you can rely on because a quarterback will know where he is. And when you talked about basketball, if you ever look at a basketball game and you see the 4 guys, typically 4 guys, 1 in, around the 3-point line, you see them making passes because they know where that guy is supposed to be and putting that ball in the right shooting pocket. No difference in route running. That quarterback knows where that guy should be. And you hear it all the time. Oh, he threw it before he came out of his route. Well, yeah, because that's the only way you're going to be successful.
Who's the best route runner on the Bengals?
I will say it's funny because I think Tyler Boyd may be the best route runner inside. Why? Because he has the most field. By being inside, he has you have a tremendous advantage on the inside because it's really hard to double a wide receiver. But when you look at Jamar Chase, He has such an awkward style. I have literally never seen a wide receiver run routes like Jamar Chase. Sometimes he comes off the ball hopping, but he's an exceptional talent. And a good coach like Eddie Brown, when I played with him, a good coach does not change that. A good coach go, oh, no. Don't, that's a bad coach. Say, don't do it that way. Do it this way. No. Jamar Chase does some things unconventional, but they're very, very super effective. And, again, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase has gotten on the same page with his style of route running. But again, it's not that, go to the parked car, make a right behind the parked car, and then run around the tree. It's just not that anymore. It's you better have your butt there because Joe Burrow is going to be on his back. And the second part of that, Tom, is the scramble drill and understanding where the quarterback is moving to and getting his vision. And then the last part of that is being able to adjust to any defense. So, yeah, the coach called a slant. The cornerback is sitting inside. There's no way I can run a slant. That slant becomes maybe whatever the game plan calls for. It can become a go. It can become an out. But to know that you have a nanosecond to adjust on the run, and that what makes a very good, complete wide receiver.
I've always thought, Tim, and I watch a lot of lacrosse because my son was an all-state player and that kind of thing playing lacrosse. But I have always felt, and it goes back to what you were talking about with the scramble drill, and it's not that whether it's lacrosse, whether it's soccer, whether it's football, I've always felt like athletes could gain such a unique perspective by playing basketball, even if it's not highly competitive basketball, right? It could be just some rec league. But you understand the use of space in basketball, I think, better than any other sport because of the confined space that you have. And knowing, to reference football now, nothing is more frustrating when you're just sitting there watching a game, some stiff like me, right? When the quarterback's rolling out to the right, the receiver ran the route that they ran that may have been a slant, but now the quarterback's out of the pocket and the receiver doesn't have the wherewithal to understand, I might want to break near the sideline, the side where he's running, to get open, right? And I mean, to me, that just seems like space. Am I right on that?
That is 100% correct, considering if you're on the sideline. If you're already on the sideline and the quarterback's coming towards you, well, you've run out of real estate. So you have to go up the field. And why do you go up the field? Because you're creating space for the guy that's coming across the field. So, yes, your analogy is so on point in understanding if kids would play basketball. And like you said, it doesn't have to be competitive to understand. And it's not just the spacing aspect of it, but what are the other guys do? How do you affect the next guy? If you have a zone and if you're a wide receiver and you run across a zone, how do you affect the next guy or the next hole? Well, you just ran into his space. So you have to sit down in your proper space and to know not just a complete wide receiver doesn't just know what he's doing. He knows what the whole concept of the play is going to be. He knows who the quarterback's priority is. He understands that. He understands, and you'll see, like Randy Moss will say, I didn't play hard every play. I mean, you would be a fool knowing that the quarterback's progression is way on the other side of the field, and you're not even in it. And there's times that happen. Why are you going to blast off the line of scrimmage, running full speed where there's no absolute purpose for it? You're just not in that play. But also understanding my job, Tim McGee, one of the fastest guys on the team. My job, run through the middle. Take the safeties. Eddie Brown comes underneath. Everybody, the crowd roars. Eddie Brown, 60, 70-yard touchdown. They have no idea what just happened. What happened was two guys saw me hauling ass down the field, followed me, that left Eddie wide open. So understanding the whole concept of what the coaches and what the play calls for, that also makes a complete wide receiver.
Tim, you're the man, and we love having you on the program. It's nice to see you again. I hope your summer's off to a good start. You got anything fun going on? You in Cincinnati? You down in Florida? Where are you?
Actually, I'm in Cincinnati, just enjoying it, playing a little pickleball. Actually, it's the norm. I'm headed to the doctor to get these old ricket knees taken care of. So that's that's a part of my life. But being back in Cincinnati, see that you got that cup there. We talked about that UDF.
Yeah.
I got to go get that. I got to go get that UDF shake, man.
There you go.
When I'm in town. I know people love Skyline Chili, but I'm a UDF man.
Yeah, amen, brother. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, pickleball. I got injured the other day, my wrist, and I'm worried that something in there is really messed up.
Playing pickleball?
Playing pickle. You know how it is, Tim. You're up there at the net, and I liken it sometimes to there was a rash for a long time in Major League Baseball where these guys are so strong. This was years ago. That hamate bone down at the bottom of your hand, right? You can feel it right down there above your wrist, where guys were so strong that they would go to check their swing, and because of the force and now holding it up really quick and the weight of the bat, they would snap that hamate bone right off the end down there. It used to happen regularly in baseball. I'm surprised it doesn't happen much anymore. But I had a doctor friend of mine over the weekend tell me that for doctors and orthopedics, pickleball is the best thing that's ever happened to their business.
Yeah, no question about it.
Right? I mean, and I said, well, yeah, because it's all us old guys playing, and now we're trying to be athletes like you, and it doesn't work that way.
Hey, we're falling. How many times have you seen a ball lob over someone's head and you see that person just fall like a tree? Timber! and I can make millions of dollars if I just hit ice on the sideline. I run Middletown Pickleball Association, and I can just tell you, man, just seeing the number of people. But it's addicting, man.
Yes,
everybody's playing it now. And it's no longer an older person's sport. It is a young person's sport. It's a family sport. And, man, I'm telling you, it's something to be reckoned with. It didn't ever compete with the big three or the big four, but it is something that all could do no matter, what level you want to be in.
It's every man's game. And you're right when it comes whether you're with other couples or whether you're with your kids. I mean, I got a kid going to college, got a kid already in college, and the four of us can go out and play and just have a great time. It's a great sport. Although I don't like these braces and all this stuff.
Dude, Tom, I think it's funny as hell when kids come in the door and go, hey, can we play pickleball today? It's like, wait a minute. You were just 2 years ago, you were just like, that's for old people. What's up with that now? Oh, me, my friends, we're getting ready to go play. It's like, okay. It really is a good sport, and I'm an ambassador for the sport. So,
well, we got to get out sometime and play a little bit. That'd be fun. Mm-hmm. All right, man. Tim, thanks for your time as always. Great to see you, buddy. Have a great day today.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks,
Okay,
Tom.
Tim McGee, the great Tim McGee, number 85 of the Cincinnati Bengals. I just find some of that inside football stuff so interesting. You know what I mean? I mean, to hear him talk about routes and all that kind of thing, you sit there and you watch a game on television and, all of us think we're experts when we're watching this stuff. Why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Whatever it might be. But to hear his perspective on it, fellows, I'll start with you guys. I find that stuff fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we had Willie Anderson on a couple weeks ago to talk about the switch from left tackle to right tackle, and now him talking about route running for receivers. There's no one that knows the game, knows those positions better than guys that used to play in the NFL. So it always, opens my eyes for not necessarily even what I don't know, but what to look for in the future when I'm, analyzing plays and watching film and stuff like that to talk about guys. So it's always great to hear from ex-players talk about stuff like that.
You guys are not old enough, though, Elliot, to remember the great Tim McGee.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. I worked with him a little bit over at my old job, but yeah,
you were at WLW, right?
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct. And I guess you kind of see with ESPN how it's not that I veer credit to them, but it's when you see former players talk about like what it was like, it's so much more interesting than seeing a non-athlete give their perspective.
Yeah.
So I always love that. I've always loved that.
Tim McGee tells it like it is, man. I just think, the more I listen to this guy through the years and hearing him on WLW doing the post game with Chick Ludwig all those years, they were so good together. And I'm assuming maybe they're back again this year. I don't know. But I just can't believe. Now, he's done a lot of things, and we've talked about that with Tim McGee. He was, player, became an agent. This guy has been very successful, an entrepreneur, this thing he's doing with the pickleball, and he kind of blew through that. But it's a big deal what he's got going on up here over in Middletown. But I'm surprised that guy is not in the booth or was never in the booth. I don't know if he had any desire to ever be in the booth. I've never asked him. But that guy knows the game, man, and knows how to describe it, and is not afraid to tell it like it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's come on this show, and every time he comes on the show, he's on here for a half hour, and you learn something that you hadn't learned, like when you're talking about route running or whatever it might be. And, it is interesting having all these guys that are played different positions, whether, even going back to when Lap came on the show a long time ago. I mean, there's just different things that you pick up here and there. And, as somebody like myself, never played football, I've only broadcasted it, but I never played it. So I just try to pick things up here and there and try and get what I can. It's always great to hear stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
is this a new thing now that you've decided to do on your honeymoon, that anytime you're going to talk, you're taking your headset off? I mean, what's the deal?
I've been doing
You've
that.
never done that before.
Yeah.
Not regularly like you are today. Every time we come to you today, I mean, you have a new hairdo. You look like you've been painting closets for a week, and you were in Florida.
You know what he's
Where's the tan?
I'm not going to lie to you, Tom. I listened to the directions of the sun tanning, or not the sun tanning, just the sunscreen. It tells you 80 minutes. That's it. That's all you can use it for is 80 minutes. So I was reapplying every 60.
I mean, were you putting on like 95 block?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
Yes. 90 block.
SPF 90?
Yes.
Not even enjoying the sun
Is there such a thing as 90?
I'll be honest, I didn't know that.
I think it's, whatever the highest is, that's what we had. Whatever was the highest available on the shelves is what we grabbed. I'm pretty sure it was like 90. But no, not lying, Tom. I take it very seriously. My family does not like it when we get sunburnt because just both sides of the family have really bad runs with skin cancer.
I get it. It's no fun. I've had stuff cut off. It's no fun.
Yeah, and that is just something that I don't ever want to experience, is getting any part of my body just,
How about
cut
your
off.
bride? Did she get a tan, or is she?
She got sunburnt on her chest.
Oh, okay.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's an area that's extremely vulnerable for whatever reason. And I tell you what's even more vulnerable is when you start to get the divot. Like I got going back here. Looks like somebody hit a wedge, and all of a sudden you got this hole in your head back here where there's no hair, right?
Yeah.
And your whole life, you never thought for a second, I don't have to worry about any, sunburn on my head. Well, you get the divot, you can get sunburn on your head.
Yeah, and
Boy, it sucks getting the divot and getting the sunburn on the head.
Oh, yeah. Surprisingly, I don't know if this is the same for many females. I don't know if there's any in the chat today, but if you split your hair, like, it'll burn your scalp just in that tiny little spot, wherever your split is. And that could happen to guys too, but like, you've got any exposed skin on your scalp, I can't imagine going through a sunburn on your scalp, because I would just be constantly itching, and
I could.
yeah, that's not good.
Look, I'm on the record as saying this is not smart. I'm on the record as saying that I could be a smarter human being, but I legitimately cannot remember the last time I put sunblock on. That's not smart. And hand up, I know that.
Yeah, my wife makes me do it. She makes me do it, and I'm like you, reluctant.
Oh.
I mean, I remember one year, and I'm convinced the reason I had stuff cut off of me in my chest and or around my neck was I played in a charity golf event years ago in Phoenix.
Okay.
In June.
Well, Phoenix is a whole different
It's
animal.
8 gazillion degrees out, and it was 100 holes in one day.
You had to play 100 holes?
So what you do is you'd hit the ball, you'd jump in your cart, you'd race and just swing it. You weren't sitting there looking at it and judging the distance and all this stuff. 100 holes in one day. Yes.
What course was this?
I don't even remember. It was some, municipal course out in Phoenix. It wasn't some sweet place,
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't going to have
I didn't know if you were playing the Phoenician or something.
No. But that is brutal. And yeah, you got to, sunscreen, it is important. I'm like you. I don't want to do it, but now you got to do it. Casey, you are the leader of men when it comes to sunscreen.
Pretty much, yeah.
And running the board.
Yes.
And his headphones are back on, Tom. Headphones have been slowly
You didn't ever
maneuvered
answer
back
that
on.
question. Thank you, Elliot. You didn't answer that question.
You know what he's doing? I'll answer it for you, Casey. You know what you're doing? You're just getting the show back on the rails after all my audio levels from last week. That's what's going on.
Well, I did a little research on trying to figure out how to make the show sound a little better. So I'm testing some stuff. I don't know if anyone heard any of the audio changes since we started talking and having this conversation.
That's right.
But I think it might sound a little better. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let the chat decide that. But that's what it's mainly for, is just to hear everyone's audio levels, making sure that we're all sounding.
Okay. Headphones are off.
Headphones are now off. They are not going back on my head until someone comes in, which they will be coming in. What's his name, Tom?
Ryan
Lefebvre.
Lefebvre.
His dad, one of the biggest personality guys I ever met in my 30-something years, and really even longer than that as a kid, because I had a chance to meet a lot of the personalities and players and managers and broadcasters in baseball going back to when my dad got the job and we moved here from Virginia Beach. But Jim Lefebvre, his dad, you might remember him. Jim Lefebvre was a major league manager, a couple different teams. He happened to be the manager of the Cubs during the time that I was there. And, you know, look, there are some people that will tell you Jim Lefebvre was one of the great pioneer baseball minds of all time, especially when it comes to hitting, because he was a hitting guru. If he wasn't a manager for a team, he was a hitting coach for a lot of teams, including the Reds. But this guy was, all over the place. And Ryan will speak more to that. But he was just such a unique guy with his big personality and the whole nine. Great player. Great player for the Dodgers. Won the Rookie of the Year when he came up in L.A. Just a heck of a hard-nosed, tough guy. So Ryan grew up around the game. And, in fact, he was an outstanding player. He was a Big Ten Conference Player of the Year playing at Minnesota and all this kind of thing. And he's also he's an interesting guy. I think you'll enjoy hearing from him today because he also is a guy, our friend Brandon Seho, who, of course, has his own podcast now and about mental health issues and all that kind of thing. Ryan Lefebvre was in a lot of very dark places in his life. Very, very dark. Depression, wrote a book about it, how his faith got him through. But we're going to talk to him about some of that today, as well as preview the Reds and the Royals, and he broadcasts all the Royals games. So, Ham and Eggers, take it away. Mr. President, I'm going to fight every indictment they throw at me. Take it away.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
Well, we had Tim McGee on. I got to see if I remember this. We had Tim McGee on. The Bengals Report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing models to improve efficiency and
productivity.
That's right, Casey. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. There is also, right here, Pawnee. Got some more Pawnee water. It's made right here in Hamilton, Ohio, and it uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that many other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water that is also the best tasting water in the world. You can visit their website at pawneewater.com. That is P-A-H-H-N-I water.com. P-A-H-H-N-I water.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water. Drink Pawnee Water, get your coffee from UDF, bet with Betfred, and get your technology solutions from Encore.tech. If you are watching the stream, like the stream. We're at 38 likes right now. We got over 100 last week. That is why Elliot pied himself in the face on Friday at the end of Friday's show. So go ahead and like the stream. We have over 100 people watching right now. We have over 130 people watching right now. We're going to get to the Reds talk. We have a ton of Reds stuff that we have not gotten to yet. We're going to get to that as we talk to Ryan Lefebvre. And then after him, of course, we have the highlights and everything else. Talk about the Reds from this past weekend. Also, if you're listening to this in podcast form, leave a rating and a review. We don't have a ton of those on this show, but we have a ton of listeners on this show. The podcast listenership has grown every single month for the last 6. I think this is the 7th month now that it's on pace to have growth for now 7 months in a row, which is a good thing when you're building a show. But leave a rating and a review. Haven't had a lot of those. And even if you're watching on YouTube and you want to go into the Apple iTunes charts, Apple Podcast charts. Leave a rating, leave a review. Tell us what you like about the show. We go in there and we read them. Same with Chatterbox Reds. Same with the Rebound Rundown. Same with Box Lunch. All the shows on here, Mental Game, Not Too Picky, all those that are on our network. We go in, we read the reviews, we see all that stuff. So if you have some things to share, you can do it on there. Especially, if you're in the comment section or whatever and you just want your thoughts to have a place to live that's longer than just in the live stream. You can do that. Is there anything else that we have forgotten? Subscribe to the channel. We crossed 8,000 subscribers. We're at 8.1 right now. The likes, keep liking the stream. We're at 43. That's 5 based off my little plug.
Well, you weren't around.
Let's get it to 50.
The pie in the face thing.
PB's Ghost, I used Pawnee in my bidet. It's good.
Oh, my God.
It's good.
Drive the sales up.
That line right there moves him the early lead.
That's good.
That's a big-time line right there from PB's Ghost. Ronnie keeps pitching for expanding the chat power rankings. What was the overall reception to the power rankings done by Elliot last week?
Oh, I missed that.
I think people kind of liked them.
Yeah,
I think
Ronnie was. Oh, my God.
Ronnie was upset because he was in the honorable mentions. And he wanted it if he would have cracked the top 10, but we only did the top 5 or 6.
Not that you have to go in great detail, but do you remember your top 5? I didn't get to see.
I know Sir Boy. I had Sir Boy at 1. I know my
he
number
just
1.
said in capital letters, power rankings were great! Exclamation point.
Sir Boy was 1 off the top of my head. I don't remember the other 4 off the top of my head, but Sir Boy was my 1.
So who's running the power rankings this week?
Well, it's you, and it should be you. First week back.
Well, isn't it Jacob? He hasn't done it yet.
Oh, that's right. Jacob, you want to do it?
I can shoulder the load this week.
Whoa, Jacob, it's all yours.
Uh-oh.
Take notes.
Yeah, I'll
Well-
take it. Start taking notes now.
Hey, look, Sir Boy Wonder put your picture as his profile pic.
I know. He's gunning for back-to-back.
Back to back.
Now,
Like he's
I
never
got to
done that
tell you,
before.
our friend, the player formerly known as Mouse Cop, says he uses Pawnee in his bong.
That's big league too.
There's no doubt about it. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Alex says he won the Chatterbox Reds best comment last week. Okay. And Reed says Jacob got a great haircut.
I appreciate that, Reed.
So as we're waiting for
Ryan Lefebvre.
for Ryan, you want to get into some of this Reds talk?
Yeah, I mean, you guys tell me. I mean, look, it's got to be interesting. I was trying to put myself in the perspective of being a Cardinal fan for a minute, right? Or any fan. Could be Kansas City tonight, although their relation to the Reds is so far distant compared to the Cardinals being in the same division. But De La Cruz rolling into town, they have to be looking at the Reds a little bit and going, uh-oh. Right?
Yeah. Casey, run the single. Run this.
So this is after De La Cruz says he's the fastest man in the world.
Yes,
Okay.
run this.
Pitching standpoint, he calls it the devil's lair. We should try some of the concessions.
So
Bang, bang,
I
De
made
La
the comment on
Cruz,
Twitter last
infield
night,
hit.
Tom. I don't know if you saw my tweet.
You cannot take your
But
eyes
I
off of
thought that
Ellie
the
De La
underrated
Cruz, who
best part
proclaimed
of this
himself
clip
yesterday
was
the fastest
Sadak
man
and
alive.
Welsh
Well,
laughing
the Cardinals are
through
gonna take a
their
look at this
pre-pitch
underneath and see
thought
if it's worth
as this is
asking
just
for
a routine ground ball to first because they're not thinking of it. You're trained as a broadcaster on a ground ball like this. It's just that's 3-1. That's an out. You mark it in your scorebook. You move on. But it was kind of just like J.R. House on Saturday where House almost got run over because he was throwing up the stop sign and Ellie ran right through it coming around the baseline. It feels like everybody is still kind of, even though they're at the major league level, they're still getting used to what Ellie can do. And it just felt like a microcosm of that when you have him right here on a 2-hopper to first. It's one of the most routine plays in the game, and he beats it out.
Yeah.
You just don't see that much. And I remember back in 2012 or 2011 when Bryce Harper was coming up and he was making these kinds of plays, and he stole home on Cole Hamels. And Cole Hamels hit him in the back because he was this young punk kid and he had all this attitude. So Hamels hits him in the back on purpose. That was on Sunday Night Baseball. And Harper gets around to third. Hamels picks over to first. Harper takes off and steals home. And that, to me, felt like the moment that the Nationals franchise changed. They didn't win the World Series till 2019, and Harper wasn't even on that team. But to me, Harper stealing home was when it felt like the Nationals invested in really you could feel like something changed in the organization. I had that same feeling last week when I was at the park for Ellie's debut on Tuesday, where he rips a double off the bat. You see him taking bases like this. He's stealing bases automatically when he comes to the plate and he's getting on. You just know he's going to get over. It's just an incredible play.
I mean, so my one thought about Ellie being called up, right? I didn't really follow much of the lower leagues like AAA, AA. Didn't really follow him much there. As soon as he made it to the big leagues, I mean, the very first series he's ever in, right? He's in the top percentile in making it to first base. Like he's breaking records already, and I'm like, I don't know if we really did him justice about how good this guy is physically. I mean, this guy is a specimen. He is just insane.
All right, let me interrupt real quick. Ryan Lefebvre says to me he has not seen the link. I know you sent it to him, Casey. I'll tell him we're going to resend it. Is that all right?
Yep. That's fine.
Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
But just to finish the thought is just the sort of energy that he brings to this Reds team is exactly what they needed, right? We talked about how they needed to learn how to win, and they're slowly learning how to win. And every time they bring up one of these guys, it's like they get another boost of energy, and they get to another level of play that wasn't previously there. I mean...
And look, this goes back to the point that I was making all season. And it goes back to what I've talked about through the minor leagues and these guys coming up together, and now they're all gradually, McLean first, then Abbott, then Ellie, probably going to see Encarnacion Strand here not too far down the line. And it goes back to the point that I make where, the Louisville Bats were over 500 for the first time in, 7 years this season?
Yep.
And winning together, when you win together and you grow up in this winning culture of all of these guys playing together, you're friends, you play together, you're excited together, there is something to be said for that. And now all of a sudden you're playing in a terrible NL Central and a really bad NL Central, and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, there's a reason that Trace brought it up yesterday on Chatterbox Reds. There's a reason that more and more people have been talking about it, that I'm not saying on June 12th that the Reds are going to win the NL Central. I'm not saying that. But they are certainly playing with an attitude right now, Tom, that makes you think to yourself, all right, if they can get some starting pitching in here, they might have something going for them. But until they figure out the pitching issue, you can't buy all the way in. But the lineup is better than pretty much any lineup in the NL Central, but you can't get over it. Eventually, you're not going to be able to just outscore every team.
Well, I mean, that's what happened in the 2 wins over the Dodgers. The starting pitching was brutal.
Yeah.
And the offense, like you said, you can't expect to go out and score 7, 8, 9, 10 runs in a game. It's not going to happen. I don't care who you play. And for the Reds, starting tonight, that means they're going to be taking on the Kansas City Royals. And our good friend, great guy, one of my favorites out there for a long, long time, kind enough to join us. He's out running kids all over the place today. Our buddy Ryan Lefebvre. Ryan, I got to tell you, I mean, I haven't seen you physically in quite a while. I mean, people got to tell you all the time, man, the older you get, the more and more you look like one Jim Lefebvre. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
I hear that all the time. And by the way, thanks to Jim Lefebvre, I got to sit in the booth with you in 1992 and 1993 at Wrigley Field when I was visiting my dad. And here we are all these years later.
Well, you've been at it for a long time there in Kansas City. Before we talk about you a little bit, I want to talk about this series. I read an article yesterday I think it was on Royals.com, something along those lines, where it was, are the Royals really this bad? I mean, the record says what it says, but what has been your impression of the Royals? Are there some things that you can find that are positive?
Well, I've always felt that question really never makes any sense, because you can finish in last place and spend the whole offseason saying, we could have won the division, but they don't give you a division title just because you felt like you should have won the division. So I think a lot can be learned from the record that they have right now, because it is what it is. And what they're going through is a lot of what the team we just played is going through, the Baltimore Orioles and the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Cincinnati Reds, you name it. And what they've done is, I think they've realized that they may have pushed the envelope in the 2020 season. We were confronted with this 60-game season. We had a lot of young pitching that we had drafted a couple of years before that out of college. They were on the edge of getting to the big leagues, maybe not completely ready, but we thought, in a 60-game season, new ownership, let's go for it. And then a couple of years later, there were some position players that were on the doorstep, and let's get them up here and see if they can play. And then mixed in with some veterans and whatever. And then you end up kind of in that limbo situation. Are we trying to win? Are we trying to develop? You really can't do both. So the record is what it is, but what they're doing is they've identified the players that they think they're going to move forward with, and they're just going to play them. And by the end of the year, you figure out who's going to go forward with you, who's not. You've seen it, Tom. I've seen it. Too many teams get to the end of a season with young players and they go, I still don't know if this guy can play or not, because he only played 92 games and we protected him in high leverage moments. And so they're just going to run him out there and see what we have at the end of the year.
You're so right, Ryan, about that. And I have always been so highly critical of teams that are in that position, the exact one that you just said, where they had a chance to do something about it, going arguably in some cases all the way back to spring training on a given year, right? But for whatever reason, they could be maybe the kid's not ready, or from a physical standpoint, they say, why start the clock, whatever it might be. But, man, when you get to end of seasons and you're asking yourself about young guys, boy, can he do it, whether he's a pitcher or a player? It boggles my mind how many times that mistake is made over and over in this sport. You agree with that?
No doubt. And, we've had a long, long stretch of losing seasons before the Royals went to back-to-back World Series in 2014 and 2015. And they were caught in that limbo for a long time for good reason. I mean, they're trying to put the most competitive team on the field, and I get that. But the worst place to be in is on October the 1st or the 3rd or whenever the season ends, and you start forecasting the upcoming season and you still don't know about a young player who spent most of the season on the roster. And yes, there are times you have to protect a young player. There are times that, you don't want to run a young reliever out into a high leverage situation at Yankee Stadium when he's been in the big leagues for 2 weeks. I mean, there certainly is a ramping up process. But at the same time, if you're going to go young, figure out what you have at the end of the year. And the teams that have turned the corner have taken a lot of hits from their fan base. They've taken a lot of hits from the media. They've taken a lot of hits from the Players Association, because they're not out signing high-priced free agents that no other team wants, and we're obligated then to give them a job because we're a young team. And I think the reason why we've seen so many teams turn the corner very quickly this year is because they grinded through with young players, and you just never know when it's going to click. I mean, ideally, De La Cruz, Bobby Witt Jr., you'd love to put him on a veteran team and bat him 7th, and then over the course of 2 years, they end up in the middle of the order. But that's when you're in a situation like the Reds are and the situation like the Royals are, you got to figure out who you are, and you just got to go with it.
I want to go back to the 2 years that you mentioned there a moment ago where the Royals played in back-to-back World Series. Of course, they won one of those World Series. And I have always maintained that when you are a smaller market or mid-market franchise, that when you have, like the Royals had during that stretch, when you have what the Reds think they have, and what the Reds certainly had going back to, say, 2012, when they had the best record in the National League. They win the first 2 playoff games in San Francisco. They're coming back home. They only got to win 1 more. They haven't lost 3 in a row at home all year long. Naturally, they get swept. End of season. Everybody bummed. Core of young players. Blah, blah, blah. But for the small and mid-market franchises, Ryan, tell me if you agree with this. When you get that shot, and it could be a 1-year run, Royals 2-3-year run, Reds had a 2-3-year run where all those pieces were together, man, you better do it because you know what's coming, and that's a free agency or the arbitration, and you start trading guys and all that kind of thing. The difference between the Royals and the Reds is when the Royals got their chance, they did it. When the Reds got their chance, they didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a conversation with someone with the Minnesota Twins recently, and I went to college there and I started my career there, so I still have a lot of friends. And you remember they had that run, they won 6 divisions in 9 years. They got past the first round 1 time. Now, that's a heck of a run, and I don't care if it's the American League Central or whatever. 6 divisions in 9 years, that's a lot of good baseball in a very short period of time. But they never really went for it. They never, when they got to the trade line. By the way, thank you for Johnny Cueto in 2015.
Yeah.
We also got Ben Zobrist from the Oakland A's. I mean, we went for it. Now, if we lose in the first round, which we should have, we were down by 4 in the 8th inning in Game 4 of the division series at Houston. I mean, it could have been over in the first round, similar to what happened to the Reds. And then all of a sudden, you went for it, and free agency is looming, like you said, and you really don't have anything to show for it. So we were fortunate to win a World Series. But I do think, to your point, that there is a difference between really going for it, trying to win a World Series, as opposed to, hey, let's just try and win the division and maybe the chips will fall in place and the postseason will get hot. That does happen. That happened to the Royals in 2014. They won 8 straight postseason games before we lost to the World Series against the Giants. But there was a feeling like, we could have done a little bit more. And they went out and they got the best starting pitcher that was available, Johnny Cueto, and they got the best position player that was available, Ben Zobrist. They gave up a ton, which is part of the reason why the Royals are in the position they are right now, is they gave up a lot to get those 2 guys. But they went for it, they won it, and now there's a template in place that, even though it's been a while since we won the World Series, that I think there's still some trust that remains that this organization knows what they're doing and they're willing to grind with us through what's going on right now.
Tonight's starter, Zach Greinke. I obviously seen him pitch a lot. I've never been around him. I have found him to be such a fascinating guy. You read these stories about, and The Athletic, the publication, continues to write these stories about Zach Greinke. I remember the guy, and Ryan, you were there, when he came up with the Royals organization, all the talent in the world, number 1 pick, all this kind of stuff on some bad teams when he first came up with the Royals. There were a lot of people saying this guy, he's a head case, he's this, he's that, whatever else. Walk us through, who is Zach Greinke? Because if there's a more interesting guy in baseball over the last 20 years, I'm not so sure there's one out there.
There really isn't. And the first time he was here, quite honestly, Tom, it was a constant roller coaster ride for him and for us, just trying to figure out as an organization how to handle Zach Greinke. He had the courage to leave the team in 2006 to deal with some anxiety and depression. And at that time, players were not admitting to that. Players would have a shoulder issue, but really what they were dealing with was a personal issue. He had the courage to step away and deal with what he needed to deal with. He came back rejuvenated. He pitched out of the bullpen for a while. The biggest concern for Zach, he was so young when he got to the big leagues, and let's see, maybe you can relate to this. You've been around the game your whole life. He didn't dream about being a big leaguer. He dreamed about playing in the big leagues. And there's a difference between the two, because there are a lot of guys that just want to be a big leaguer. They want all the things that come with being a big leaguer. And it takes getting to the big leagues to accomplish that. Some guys just want to play baseball, And I think Zach just wanted to play baseball. He got to the big leagues at age 20 on an older team, and he just didn't fit in. And the 4 days between his starts were just torture for him. There were rumors that he went to the front office after the first year and said, can I start all over again in A-ball as a position player? And he probably would have made it to the big leagues as a position player. So when he came back as a reliever, I think everyone felt like, you know what, maybe this is a better fit for him. He can pitch 3 days a week. He doesn't have as much downtime in between starts. But eventually they put him back in the rotation. He won the Cy Young, which was great for us, great for him in the end, but really wasn't the best thing for him at that time because now he's a household name. Everybody wants a piece of Zach Greinke. Everybody wants to know why he left in 2006. Is he getting better? On and on and on. And so all of a sudden there's this huge attention toward him, which he didn't want. And a year later, we're trading him because he really didn't want to be here anymore. I think he'd tell you right now he didn't want to be here anymore. He didn't think we could win. We traded him to Milwaukee for Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar. Lorenzo Cain was the ALCS MVP in 2014. Alcides Escobar was the ALCS MVP in 2015. So that trade really worked out for us. But I tell you what, having him back now as a father of 3 and a husband, it's just been so refreshing for all of us. I think we all had some unfinished business with him. I think we all would have had regrets if he didn't come back and maybe finish his career as a Royal. I don't know if he's going to continue to play or not. But he is just – Zach Greinke is Zach Greinke. And there's – God made one Zach Greinke. And every time you're around him, he now that we know him better, he's just a fascinating person to talk to. And he has a terrific sense of humor. And you mentioned that article in The Athletic. I'll add a story that happened this year. We were in Anaheim, and Drew Butera is a member of the Angels coaching staff now, and he was our catcher in 15. In fact, he caught the final out of the World Series when Wade Davis struck out Wilmer Flores. And he was Zach's personal catcher for a time with the Dodgers. So we're in Anaheim, and I'm talking to Drew Butera by the batting cage, and here comes Zach Greinke. And he's got this grin on his face. And he just interrupts the conversation, didn't mean anything bad by it. And he says, Drew, I've been thinking you need to make a comeback. And Drew said, well, why is that? He goes, because everybody hits under 200 now. And I mean, that's Zach Greinke. And, but then it's, and I don't want to drag this out too long, but he sits behind me on the plane. And I've known him now since he was 20 years old and he's 39. And one of his most recent accomplishments was he struck out 1,000 different hitters. There are 5 pitchers in Major League Baseball that have struck out 1,000 different hitters. And he just downplayed it. And so we were having a fun little conversation on the plane about me saying, Zach, you might be the last guy that ever does that. I mean, you can't downplay something like that. I mean, it's Nolan Ryan and Roger Clemens and Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson and you. I mean, come on, that's a big deal. And he went into this long thing about how, well, 10 years from now, there's going to be 10 of those guys because nobody cares about striking out anymore. And we're going to go to 32 teams and you aren't going to have 2 different leagues and everyone's going to be facing everybody. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And so our research guy gave us a list of who was on the cusp and just a really interesting conversation with someone who just he's brilliant because he's not only good physically, but his thought process in a game is fascinating.
It's been debatable. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer? There's some out there that say yes. There are others out there that, for whatever reason, say nope. What do you think?
I think he is. I mean, he's going to probably get to 3,000 strikeouts this year. He has won a Cy Young. He's won an ERA title in both leagues. He's been an All-Star 6 times. He's won 6 Gold Gloves. He's won a Silver Slugger. And I think everything I just rattled off, he's the only pitcher who has won a Cy Young, an ERA title in both leagues, a Gold Glove, and a Silver Slugger, the only pitcher in the history of the game. He, Bob Gibson, and Greg Maddux are the only ones to go to 6 All-Star games and win 6 or more Gold Gloves. So he's slowly but surely putting himself on lists of 5 or lists of 4 or lists of 3.
It's pretty amazing when you start looking at some of those things. Before I let you go, because, there are a lot of people out there. We have a young guy here named Brandon Sejo, who does this podcast about mental health. He's gone through a lot of depression, suicidal thoughts, all those kind of. You mentioned Greinke. having the courage to do it. You were in the same boat. You were an outstanding college player at the University of Minnesota, your hometown in Minneapolis. Play in a COD league, you play a little bit of minor league baseball, and then your career takes off as a broadcaster. But you came out and wrote a book about the depression issues and anxiety issues that you had to deal with.
Yeah, and it ties into Zach somewhat, because the summer before Zach left the team is when I was going through the worst of my anxiety and depression. It was the summer of 2005. And in 2006, Jeff Passan, who's a great national writer and reporter now, he was writing for the Kansas City Star. And I didn't share it with a lot of people, but he asked me about it, and they wrote a story about it in the Kansas City Star. And it was at the same time that Zach had left the team for anxiety and depression. So you've got Zach, a professional athlete, first of all, admitting that's what he was really going through, and he was away from the team. And the team's announcer, who at the time was 35 years old and had the life that most men would dream of having, broadcasting Major League Baseball, traveling on the airplane, staying in the nice hotels, and talking about how much major depressive order had turned my life upside down. And so because of Zach, really, that story really gained some traction, because people wanted to know, what's wrong with Zach? How could Zach possibly be depressed? How were you depressed? And so suddenly I'm on talk shows, and people are writing stories about it. I'm getting letters from fans whom I've never met and still haven't met, thanking me for telling my story because it sounded a lot like their story. And that just kind of gained momentum over time when Jeffrey Flanagan, our beat writer at the time, asked me if I wanted to write a book. And so that book is just me detailing what happened to me in 2005, and really my childhood and all of the self-esteem I had, the insecurity issues I had that led up to me as a 34-year-old at the time going through, the worst personal crisis of my life. But the reason I wrote the book, Tom, is not because I'm an author. I have not read a book or written a book. I've read a book, but I haven't written a book since. Probably won't write another book. I'm not a writer by nature. But the people that helped me the most, aside from my counselor and my life coach and whomever, what helped me the most was other people looking me in the eye and saying, you know what, I went through the same exact thing, and here's what I did. And I could look them in the eye and see them as someone who got to the other side of it. And that really is what gave me the most hope. And I realized, because of my platform, nothing more than my platform. My story is not a remarkable story. It's just an honest story, but I have a unique platform. And I truly believe that God did not put me here to call baseball games. The reason I'm here is because I went through this, and I had a lot of people walk alongside me. And really that's my main purpose in life, outside of being a husband and a father, is sharing my experience at men's groups and churches, and which makes what I went through worth it.
You're a good man, Ryan. We think the world of you. We're so excited for your success, not only what you're doing in the booth, but what you're doing to help others. And we thank you for your time today, my friend. Best to you and your family.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that you did for me back in 92 and 93, because after the day was over, I said, I want to do what Tom Brenneman's doing. I want to broadcast.
Well, now I want to do what Ryan Lefebvre's doing. So now we're back.
I want to do it on radio. I want to do it on radio and television, because I don't know if Reds fans remember back in those days with the Cubs that you did radio and TV in the same game. Yeah. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and it really changed the direction of where I wanted to go in my career. So I'm grateful to this day.
Amen, brother. Great to see you, Ryan. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, Ryan Lefebvre, kind enough to join us. Really, really respect that guy so much. He went through a lot. I mean, there are some of the stories. I've had him on another podcast before, sharing some of the stories about where he was in his life. And, man, we'll get him on for a long interview one day if he'll be kind enough to join us. And because, hey, look, there are a lot of people out there. I mean, a lot of people out there. You walk around sometimes and you think, man, I got all these problems and nobody else has these problems. Why do I have them and they don't have them? Everybody's got them. Everybody's got them. And, for some, they take a greater toll than for others. Interesting, he thinks that Zach Greinke's a Hall of Famer. It's funny. You hear all the time, if you have to ask if a guy's a Hall of Famer, is he really a Hall of Famer? And there are some guys out there, and Greinke's one of them, where, I just kind of say to myself, and it's really unfair of me to even try to answer the question, because for a long time he was in the American League, where he has spent the overwhelming majority of his career over the American League. He had cups of coffee in Arizona and the Dodgers and Milwaukee. But most of his success, a lot of it anyway, not all of it, because he's been effective in both leagues. A Hall of Famer for you based on everything you just said?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny, we were having a discussion in the chat when you ask about if you need to ask about whether a guy is a Hall of Famer, is he actually a Hall of Famer? We were listing guys off in the chat as it related to that question. We were talking about Bryce Harper, some of these guys right now that are playing, Andrew McCutchen, a lot of these guys that are in the league right now. Are they going to get into the Hall? I think Harper will get into the Hall one day. I don't know if he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I looked at his Baseball Reference real quick just to make sure I wasn't going off a bias from when he was playing with the Nats or anything like that. But 2 MVPs. I know he hasn't won a ring. How much does the ring play into it? Probably a little bit. If you could get him one, maybe with Philadelphia. But I still think that Harper will get in. You look at Aaron Judge, a lot of these guys. And then as it goes back to Zach Greinke, look, I haven't followed Zach Greinke's career as closely as somebody like Lefebvre has, but he just feels to me like a guy with the stats to back up what could be a Hall of Fame career down the line, somebody that will get in, not somebody that will get in on the first ballot. I don't have anything to back this up. So this take that I'm about to say could be very wrong. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Here we go.
But how often, and this is kind of, I guess, a genuine question too, how often do guys in the Baseball Hall of Fame have seasons that you can specifically point to that are bad seasons, and more than just one? Because it feels like right now Zach Greinke is not having a Hall of Fame caliber season this year.
No.
But is it how many guys that get into the Hall that we say, oh, that guy's a Hall of Famer, have throwaway seasons? Now, it's different when you get to the end of the career. I know that maybe that's a mitigating factor there, but I'm just putting that out there that a lot of times when you think, oh, yeah, that guy's a Hall of Famer, you're not seeing a lot of seasons that make you they might not be the peak. They might tail off. Max Scherzer's a Hall of Famer. Guys that maybe stick around a little too long. But I don't know. It feels to me like maybe you don't have the throwaway seasons. But then again, when your career is as good as his was at the peak, it offsets that. So you're willing to have the discussion on it. And to me, yeah, I'd still put him in. But at least that's something you think about.
Greinke's closing in on 3,000 strikeouts here. He's at 2,932, and I have a hard time keeping any starting pitcher that gets to 3,000 strikeouts out of the Hall of Fame. I mean, you can pick any other stat you want, but if you've been in the league long enough to throw 3,000 strikeouts, I mean, you got to be in. There's only he'd be the 19th or 20th pitcher to ever do that. I mean, it's not a big list. I think that makes him a pretty open and shut case.
Yeah, this is his 20th season, I believe. Is that right?
I believe so.
20th season. So I think the longevity factor of that, his ERA, I mean, this is his worst ERA since, I believe, the second season in 2005. Last year, he had a sub-4 ERA. Yeah. I would say he's definitely a Hall of Famer. He's not first ballot, but he's certainly a Hall of Famer, I'd say.
The reason I bring up the whole thing about, do you ask the question? Because if you go back and you look at his year by year. Now, Ryan brings up a good point. He played on some bad teams when he first came up with Kansas City. He go 13-10. One year went 16-8. That was really the big breakthrough year for him. Had a very low ERAs at 2.1. But then he gets shipped off to Milwaukee, and he goes with them 16-6. He was a big reason why that whole thing got going. But then you start going through the next number of years, okay? 9-3, 21 starts. 6-2, 13 starts. Injuries are piling up. Now he comes back and gets healthy. He goes to the Dodgers. Good team, right? He has seasons of 15, 17, 19 wins with a 1.6 ERA his final year with the Dodgers. Got him that huge contract in Arizona. He goes to the Diamondbacks, and he's just, he's good. Good ERA. He goes to a great team in Houston. And now the numbers start to decline as he gets a little bit older. You know, you look at his postseason pitching career. He has not been a great postseason pitcher by any stretch of the imagination. A 4-6 record, and in 21 starts, he's only pitched 113 innings with an ERA of over 4. So, you know, look, I think you look at some of the regular numbers, 224 wins. Who'd we mention the other day just got his 200th win? Clayton Kershaw, right? Kershaw's been pretty good. And he's had much better year by year. He's a guy you don't even ask the question about, Kershaw. Mm-hmm. Lock, stock, barrel, no doubt about it. Greinke, you know, and a lot of people get mad at me when I say the same thing about Votto. I think there are some people that ask the question, is he a Hall of Famer? And when you start stacking up his numbers, and I'm not talking about on-base percentage and some of these things, that very much mean something. I don't want to dismiss that. But there are a lot of quote-unquote baseball guys. You go back and you start looking at first basemen and their numbers. Home runs, runs batted in, all these kinds of things. You know, there are some would say, okay, you walk the year by year through Votto's career, and he's had 4 or 5 just phenomenal years. But then there have been a lot of years that weren't good at all. And I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't be, because if you go through a lot of these numbers that a lot of people pay attention to today, and rightfully so, because at the end of the day, it's hard to argue when Votto says, now look, you can get into that whole debate and whittle it all down. And we've all heard this before about Joey Votto, right? Pitch that far off the outside corner with a runner at third and 1 out. Should he be offering at that pitch and driving the ball to left field to knock in a run and get a sac fly? Or does he take that pitch because it's not a strike and it's ball 4 and he flips about away and trots down to first base? I think that's a legitimate question. But Votto, and really about as succinct as you can get, is he has said once, he said it 50,000 times or more. His job is to not make an out. And he is really good at not making outs. Right?
But you don't want to, I mean, the point is to get on base. So somebody else can either drive you in. Obviously, you'd like to see him hit a bunch of home runs, which he has. But Joey Votto's been phenomenal. He's arguably won an MVP 3 times. He was robbed in 2017. Giancarlo Stanton should not have won it. 2015, I think Bryce Harper won it. It was a unanimous MVP. Votto finished 3rd that year. So I think Joey Votto is, without question, a Hall of Famer. I get the point that, you know, in a clutch situation, you want your guy swinging the bat opposed to just looking to get on base. But for a career, this guy's had almost a 20-year career. He's getting on base 42% of the time.
Yep.
That's historic. You know, that's nobody does that. So I think Joey Votto is absolutely a Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
It's interesting. His numbers are almost identical in more at-bats. But it's amazing how similar, outside of batting average, it's amazing how similar Votto's numbers are. I was just looking him up the other day to Freddie Freeman. And a lot of people walk around and they say, well, Freddie Freeman's going to the Hall of Fame. Well, I think it's a little early to say that Freddie Freeman's going to go to the Hall of Fame. But some could argue that, and I'm not going to sit here and argue with them about it. But I don't know. It's interesting how, you know, maybe it's just old school baseball guys. They want to see you drive in that run. They don't want to see you walk, right?
I agree. Yeah, that's why you see a lot of mixed opinions on Votto. It's just what you said. There's a lot of opportunities to, you know, sack fly, drive in runs, and he just takes the walk, you know, which is great when you're looking at his stats now. You know, we're pulling up Baseball Reference. He's getting on base 40+% of the time. That's awesome. But, you know, when push came to shove for a couple years, it felt like Votto wasn't what you wanted out of the superstar on your team. So I think that's where a lot of the is he a Hall of Famer sentiment comes from. But just looking at the numbers now, yeah, I feel like it's not really a question.
Tom, how much of it do you think comes into play how he hasn't won? The Reds haven't won. Is that a factor at all?
I think it used to be. I think for a long time, and I still think that there's some of that in the NFL, although I think we're starting to see that change a little bit. I think for baseball, that was true for a long, long time. I don't think so much anymore. I think because everything is so data-driven now that, you know, you just look at the cold, hard facts and what the numbers are. Because when they send out these ballots for the Hall of Fame, I mean, they give you right, it's in a packet. They just sit there or on a downloading computer or whatever. It's all right there where you can just look at the numbers. Now, Steve points out, I've never gone and done this, but Steve Ross, I'm going to do this. Steve says, check Votto's number versus Will Clark. For those of you who don't remember Will Clark, I mean, the guy could hit, man. The guy could hit. Like Votto, left-handed batter, some power, drove in runs, all that kind of stuff with the Giants and later the Rangers. But Steve Ross points out, says, check Votto's numbers against Will Clark. Very similar. And, of course, Will Clark has gotten nowhere close to being a Hall of Famer. I have to look those things up. Will the Thrill, they call him.
So can I join in this conversation?
Yes, please do.
So the one thing that really stinks about some of these guys, and this goes for just about every sport, when they start to diminish in their career, they're not at the top of their games anymore, and they just keep pushing. They just keep pushing. I think a lot of like the Peyton Manning, like that last year, where he just was noodle arming throws. He was bad, right? I can't help but feel like, even though Votto has had something very similar, it's not exactly the same as that. It's not been like consistency for 15 years, right? And
what do you mean?
Well, like what I'm getting at is Peyton Manning was in the top of the league. And this is probably a poor comparison because not everyone's Peyton Manning, right? Especially at their game. But Peyton Manning had 15 years of unbelievable success.
Yeah.
Always the top of the league. You look at Drew Brees, another guy that we think should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And this is what we're kind of arguing, right? Is Joey Votto a first ballot Hall of Famer? Is he even a Hall of Famer?
He is a Hall of Famer.
And to me, the last few years that he's been in the league with the injuries and just, I think has really changed the perception of him. Whereas I think if you were to ask...
Yeah. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, if you were to ask back when, I'm just looking here, 2019, he was definitely on track to be probably a first ballot. Am I correct on saying that?
Yeah, but even still, the only, I guess, down seasons you would say that he had would have been 2020.
Which
and
COVID
that was a
season.
COVID.
Yeah,
that was a
exactly.
COVID season. He hit 266 in 2021.
Well, also in the same sentiment is that injuries also play a huge part in this too. Like, I don't know. It's just unfortunate for him that
he's been in the league 16 years and he's gotten an MVP vote in half of them. That's pretty good.
He led the league in on-base percentage 8 years.
Well, that's what I'm
He
saying.
had a great peak as well. Like, it's not like he was just sustained statistics. He had a phenomenal peak.
So then why do we talk about him like he doesn't have sustained success? That's what I'm getting at, I guess.
Well, I think that's why we're so frustrated. I think you are peeling back the layer of the onion, Casey, on why we get so frustrated. But and then to your point, Jacob, he got on his on-base percentage in 2015 was .459. That didn't even lead the league. That on-base percentage, .459, was the second highest of his career, behind the .474 in 2012.
Wow.
And he didn't even lead the league that year.
All right, let me jump in here a second about something, okay? So let's use a guy who's not in the Hall of Fame. Because Bleacher Report about a year ago ranked the top 50 first baseman of all time. Votto came in 9th on that deal, okay? But a couple of guys that are right behind him in those rankings would be, let's pick Todd Helton.
Oh, man.
Now, everybody says, his numbers are inflated because he played at Coors Field in Denver. That is a fact. But he was still a .290 batter in his career on the road with an on-base percentage of .390. So he wasn't some stiff, right? This guy hit He had almost 600 doubles, career batting average of .316, career on-base percentage of .414, and an slugging at .539. He had 369 home runs and knocked in over 1,400 runs. So now there's a guy that's not in. Does Joey Votto deserve to go in the Hall of Fame ahead of Todd Helton? Helton's had to wait. He's not in. I mean, if you want to look at numbers now, does he go in ahead of Helton?
Who did he play for, Tom?
Rockies.
The terrible teams. Although he got to a World Series. I mean, he played on a couple of playoff teams. Then you get to Freddie McGriff. Took the guy forever to get in.
I'm not saying that Votto's...
Fred McGriff hit 493 home runs. Finished in the top 10 in MVP 6 times and won a World Series. He had to get in through the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. I'm just asking the question. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying. And then you get to Rafael Palmeiro. Now, there is no contest between Palmeiro and Votto, offensively speaking.
Well, he juiced.
Well,
I'm not saying that should keep him out. Let's be very clear, as the world's foremost authority on Barry Bonds. But I'm just saying there's your answer. I don't think there's any discussion about Palmeiro.
All right, we'll go back to Helton.
Yeah.
Todd Helton didn't win an MVP. Votto did.
Okay.
Todd Helton never finished top 5 in
Correct.
MVP voting. Votto did 3 times. I think there's a pretty big difference when you look at how Todd Helton. I mean, granted, I wasn't around. I wasn't watching baseball. But I feel like Todd Helton is probably viewed very differently than Joey Votto at this point in their careers, respectively.
Okay.
How about the Reds right now, though, Tom? We're going to talk a little bit more about the weekend from the Reds. Spend the last few minutes on this.
Yeah, we can do that. You guys give me your thoughts. I mean, you continue to look at them, and they're finding a way to win games. They're keeping it exciting. I don't think anybody thought in a million years we'd be in the second week of June when the season started, and you'd be talking about this team being 4 games out. And even being 4 games under 500, I compared them in the monologue, say, to the Mets, who were spending $300 and something million on their payroll. They're also 4 games under 500, but they don't play in the National League Central.
What do you do about the pitching?
Well, Hunter Green looked good yesterday.
Yeah.
He looked good. Not great, but good, and certainly good for his first start. Been bothered by a hip. They had to back him up a week. He looked good, and he's been good. That's now 3 starts in a row where he's been good. Abbott, I mean, what else do you say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's been unbelievable. 2 starts, albeit, but unbelievable. Outside of that is where you got some concerns. I would be shocked if we saw Lodolo back this year.
I thought he was on track to come.
The last time he was seen, he's cruising around in one of those scooters, and we're in the middle of June.
Oh boy.
So he ain't coming back before mid-July at the minimum.
At the minimum.
Because he's got to go down and rehab. You got to build the arm strength back up again. It's not just the injury to the leg. This guy hasn't been able to throw. Now, maybe he's getting down on a knee and he's doing some stuff just to strengthen his arm and exercises and all that. I get it. But he is going to be out for a long time. So don't even think about him. David Bell was in a situation where starting this week, he was going to whittle down what had been a 6-man starting rotation down to 5. Had Graham Ashcraft not gotten hurt the other day, the Reds were going to have to make a very tough call on what to do with him. Because as promising as he was in March and April, it has been a nightmare in May and June. But he hurts his calf. Now, they haven't put him on the injured list yet, but that's probably where he's headed. So then you have, Lively, who by and large has been okay, right? Yeah. You got Luke Weaver, and then who am I forgetting?
Who are we?
Did you say Williamson?
Oh, and Brandon Williams, who really, outside of the first start, not good.
Ashcraft is on the IL, by the way. They
He
placed
is.
him on the IL on Friday.
Okay. All right. So he's on the injured list. Williamson has not been good, but I'm not going to throw in the towel on Williamson. You're talking about a handful of major league starts since they brought him up.
Yeah.
But this is where it's interesting you asked that question, Paul, because here's the deal. This gets back to what we were talking about with Ryan Lefebvre. And this is where, much has been made about the Reds. Are they going to deviate from their plan of building this thing up? Or because they're close in the National League Central, would they step out there and make a trade to try and win it this year? So that's one way to ask the question as it pertains to that specific topic when it comes to a rebuild and staying with a plan. But the other part of it is what we were talking with Ryan Lefebvre a little bit earlier. You have to be able to answer the question at the end of the year, even on young players. You have to be able to answer the question, is this guy good enough to stay with him for the long haul? So I don't know where Weber figures into all this, how the Reds view him. He's a former number 1 pick. He's gone through a lot of injuries. Reds have brought him back in. He's still a young man. There's no reason why, from a health perspective, he can't blossom into a good pitcher. But you better be able to answer by the end of this season. Not much you can do about Lodolo because he's hurt. But you better be able to answer, and you've already signed Green to a long-term contract. But guys like Williamson, right? De La Cruz, I know it's a fast start. McLean, Friedel, some of these guys, he's a little older than the rest of that group. You have got to be able to say by the end of the year, this guy is a keeper or we got to find somebody else to replace him. Williamson falls in that category. Ashcraft is in that category because there are legitimate questions about him now.
But if we're sitting here a month from now at the All-Star break, if we're sitting here the first game out of the All-Star break, which I believe they go to Milwaukee. I think they go to Milwaukee, right? Am I right on that? Okay. They go to Milwaukee the first series out of the All-Star break. Say they win 2 out of 3 or sweep Milwaukee out of the All-Star break. And let's just say that sweep of Milwaukee in Milwaukee, which the Oakland Athletics just did, by the way, puts the Reds 2.5 to 3 games back in the Central. Do you go and try and win the thing? You don't overextend yourself, but if you go and do that out of the All-Star break where now you're 2 months away, give or take, from the end of the season, I mean, this is kind of the same thing we always talk about with these young teams where you hope that you get in a situation where everybody stays healthy and you can continue to compete for a long time and you build for the future, yada, yada, yada. But if you put yourself in a position where you can just kind of mess around and win something, why not go try and win it?
They don't even need to win the Central. I mean, they're only, I think, 2.5 games back from wild card.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, in the end, like, if you're gonna buy, you're gonna try and win for the.
I know. I'm just saying. Like,
but you're right.
I don't even think it's a really discussion. They should just go for it. Yes.
Well, that all depends on what you mean. Go for it. I mean, and there are. I mean, I know what you're saying, Casey, but there are different examples. Like the best example is a Trevor Bauer example. Okay, if you can somehow, some way find a team that wants to get rid of somebody who's under a contract that really is a pretty good contract. So in other words, you're not trading for some guy that can be a free agent after you trade for him in 3 months. The Reds got Bauer, who was not pitching well at the time. He was having a tough year in Cleveland. He had success, but he wasn't at the time. But the Reds knew that there was a good chance. The work ethic, all the rest of the stuff. He's not a very good teammate, but they knew his mental makeup and his desire to be great was worth taking the chance on because you had him under contract for the next year. So if the Reds are going to quote-unquote go for it, that's the kind of deal they're going to make, right? Or a guy like, and this has been floated around a little bit, like Aroldis Chapman. Chapman's on, what, a $4 million deal this year? How would Aroldis Chapman look in your bullpen?
Aroldis Chapman setting up Alexis Diaz makes any 20-year-old Reds fan just a little bit more excited. Aroldis Chapman was really the most exciting player we had in Cincinnati for a while, throwing 105 out of the pen. We can get him back on this teams with how this city feels right now. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But again, the price has to be right. I don't want us to get sped up trading for guys just because the Central is bad. I mean, Nick Kirby put it in the chat, stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, we've killed the deadline these last 2-3 years to build this farm, to get these players to a point where hopefully the Reds no longer have these peaks and valleys. We're going to be a nice competitive team playing for to win the NL Central year in and year out for a decade plus. And I think, tearing up that farm system now to go get, a starting pitcher on a 2-month rental to, try to win a division and probably get pumped in the first round just like we did in 2020. That's not high on my list. That doesn't appeal to me. I want to be a competitive team, a franchise that's here to stay. And I think we've set ourselves up to be in that position.
But I don't think. But I'm not talking about a rental though.
Of course,
I'm talking about somebody that maybe you get not long term, but 2 years.
I would love that.
Or one more year.
Yeah, or at least
one more year, because next year, in theory, Votto's $25 million off the books, right?
Right.
So you would think. I mean, I'm not going to say for sure about this because I don't know, but you would think that $25 million. Now, some of it you're gonna choose to you have to pay some guys in arbitration, or you might have to pay whatever. But point I'm making is that's a lot of free money. So you might be able to acquire. Somebody brought up in the chat a Shane Bieber. Which is a lot like a Trevor Bauer deal, where he's got a good contract next year, right? Good pitcher, can help you next year, can help you try and win next year. I don't know. I've just always felt like, look, and I sound like the wrong guy on this deal because McLean has played well. De La Cruz has not been here a week, but has been just fantastic and extraordinarily exciting. Abbott has been unbelievable, and it's only 2 starts. But look, it takes a lot more than that to win, to really win. And I'm not talking about finishing 500 and winning the wild card and getting drilled in a 1-game playoff or getting drilled in a 3-game division series. I'm talking about winning. Like we were talking about earlier with Ryan Lefebvre.
Yeah.
I mean, this young Reds group, are they more talented than that group of Bruce and Chapman and all these guys that came up at the same time that were on that 2012 team? That 2012 team was a damn good team now. They won 97 games. 97. And couldn't get out of the first round of the playoffs. So the point I'm making is that, there comes a point where all of a sudden you can say, in theory, are they going to be good for a decade? A decade may be a stretch because some of these guys are going to become free agents and you see where they are in their career and whatever, right? Kind of like the Bengals. You can't pay them all, not in Cincinnati. And that's getting way down the trail. But, man, if you can find a way to get somebody who can help you the rest of this year, maybe you sneak in. But I agree with Kirby, Nick Kirby. You just got to stay the course for a while. And I think you need to be able to answer the question, what do we have for next year? And this is where the whole Votto thing, and I don't know why I don't know why every single time I say something that somebody may not like, and I said Votto's a Hall of Famer, but I don't understand it. It happened when I was a broadcaster. It happens to my dad all the time. There's no dislike for Joey Votto here. Guy's an unbelievable player. He's a smart guy. He's a fun guy. He's a cool guy. Just because somebody presents at least a question of an argument about something doesn't mean they're beating the guy up. It's a legitimate question. Asking about Todd Helton compared to Joey Votto is a legitimate question, and a question that Hall of Fame voters have to answer. I am not one of them. But this whole Votto thing, they're in a tough spot this year. Now, he's still not hitting. I know he hit a home run down there, but he's hitting $150, right? Yeah. He's got like 8 hits total down there this year at AAA in 2 different stints. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But he's still Joey Votto. He's arguably the greatest offensive player in the history of the franchise. He's one of the top 5 players in the history of the franchise without a shadow of a doubt. The sentimentality of getting him back up here and getting him on the field to see Joey one more time, how does that affect you being able to answer the question at the end of the year, what do I have in Steer? What do I have in Encarnacion Strand? Right?
Right.
Pressure there to play him if he comes back.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And I think you talk about the Hall of Fame stuff. Joey Votto is one of the few guys, I'd argue, the best player in the city for a long period of time, and I think half the city still doesn't like him. I think it's a personal thing, but as, Casey said, he's kind of tailed off the end of his career. He has grown significantly in what people think of him the past couple years. He's been more fun.
Yep.
He's never stepped in front of a microphone before the past couple years. He's been doing that more. The perception of him now has changed. It's a positive perception of Joey Votto. Fans are going to want to see him. They're going to beg the Reds to put him in the lineups, and the Reds are going to put him in lineups. Now back to what you say, I don't know how that affects this roster because Joey Votto in this lineup is not going to help the team. It was going to hurt the team. Spencer Steer is a better player right now than Joey Votto. Strand is probably a better player right now than Joey Votto. So I don't know what that means in terms of who plays DH, what happens with the infield. Infield's already crowded. So I don't know, but there's absolutely a pressure that the Reds front office is going to be playing Joey Votto. And I think Marty said it last week. You're paying him $25 million. He has to play. You can't bench him. So you have to play him. He has to be up here if he's quote-unquote healthy.
Well, let me zero in on that and just ask you guys, because you're fans, you go to games, and all of you are very young. You've seen Votto great. You've seen Votto not so good. Now we're seeing Votto injured, and we're seeing Votto in the last year. How would you feel as a Reds fan, and I'll go around the horn here. I'll start with you, Jacob. How do you feel if Votto comes back and is on the Major League active roster, and he's getting at bats for the big league team when you are still, Paul, as you point out, 4 back, 3 back, 2.5 back. Now we're getting into July and August. I mean, you're right there. You're right there with 65, 70 games to go. How are you going to feel about are you going to be angry they play him, or are you okay knowing that, well, maybe he's not the best guy we could put out there, but we're putting him out there because he's Joey Votto?
Yes, I think is how I would answer that question.
Yes?
So he's put 20 years into being the face of this franchise, being a great player for 20 years. We just had a talk for 15, 20 minutes about whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. He definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, deserves, home series, farewell tour, standing ovation when he comes to the plate, all that stuff. He deserves it, and I want to give it to him. So I hope he's in the lineup at least a couple times, whatever. If we get to July and we're a handful of games out of first place, Joey Votto becomes a matchup DH. Like, if he can go out there and he can hit against, right-handed pitching, sure, let him be the Kevin Newman of the mid-July Reds. He can DH against, whoever and provide power, which this team needs and which he's been able to do. So, yeah, I think there is a place for Joey Votto on this team that can help the team win. If he's our everyday first baseman and he's not playing like Joey Votto, based on what we've seen from Spencer Steer and what Christian Encarnacion Strand continues to show us in AAA, I have a hard time keeping him in the lineup.
Let me ask you this, though. Like you guys have been saying, if they're not going to go all in at the deadline, you're saying you're staying the course, we're not going to try this year, then why does it matter? Then you can play Joey,
Well,
right?
The only reason it matters is because, for me, I got to know who I got and where I got him and where I'm going to play him at the end of this year. I've got to have a plan in place that says, you know what, we love India. We're okay going to arbitration with him, but we're going to ask him, you don't have to say it publicly, but privately, we're going to go to India and say, we need you to move to the outfield. Okay? You go to Steer, and you say, you know what, you were playing pretty good at third base. Pretty good. You're going back there. That's all you're going to do this winter is get ready to go back to third. You look at Encarnacion Strand, and you got to be able to say, you know what, this guy's ready. He's ready. Whether it's as a first baseman, which is his numbers have not been bad defensively down there. And you say, well, offensively, I know he can get it done. Okay? If I got to DH him, okay, then what am I going to do at first? Is Steer going to be the guy? And then what am I going to do at third? I got to be able to have the answer to all of those questions going into my off season. So, Paul, would you be upset if Votto's getting ABs and the team's 2.5 back in August?
No, I wouldn't necessarily be upset about it. I would be upset if they put him in there in place of somebody like a Christian Encarnacion Strand who had shown, if say Joey can't come back till then, or say he's extending himself, and you pull up Encarnacion Strand, he plays well, but you say, Votto's on the books. Let's slot Votto in and see if he can be more consistent so you avoid that slump after the league adjusts to Encarnacion Strand. That's where I'd be a little tentative about it. I have two points on this, though. I think, one, just from an overarching perspective, it's nice to know, we knew if you had followed the team, somebody like Nick Kirby, who has been on this for years and been following every move as closely as, and you've been around it too, Tom, where you have the trust of a guy like Nick Kroll now that you can trust him to make the right.
Without a doubt.
You can trust him to make the right decision. You're not sitting here in an inept front office perspective where you're going to see him make a move for a starting pitcher or whoever it might be. You're going to trust him to make the right decision on whatever this is, and potentially having discussions of what they want to do with Joey Votto when he comes up. I see Trace putting it in the lineup about or putting in the chat about what the numbers are in AAA. I take a little bit of that with a grain of salt because I mentioned this way back in the beginning of the season where I think Joey had struck out like 20 times in his first 20-some at-bats or whatever. I'm not watching one single at-bat that Joey Votto is putting together at AAA. Those could be true numbers. But Joey Votto's also got a very weird baseball brain in the sense of he could be down there doing stuff with his swing. He could be fixing things. He could be trying something new that he has to adjust to because of his injury. It's a little tough for me to read into those numbers as true numbers until we get him up here into the – but if he goes 8, 10, 12 games and he's 2 for 35, you're not going to just keep trotting him out there if the Reds are 3 back. You're not going to do that for nostalgia purposes.
Well, the thing is you bring up a great point there, but and to make sure everybody understands, I think I alluded to it earlier. We were talking about Votto's numbers at AAA this year, and Paul just brought him back up again. This is his second stint down there, and there was about a month and a half in between where he's not been down there. He just went back down there prior to last weekend. So, Paul's right. The first stint. So when you read what his overall stats are, they're going to show you what he did in his first stint and his second stint combined and how they all add up to a AAA season for Louisville. So the first stint, just throw him out. You got to pay attention on what he's doing now. For all the things you point out about Votto, and you're spot on. Oh boy, we're almost out of time. We are out of time.
We're talking. We're all right. We're talking.
But here's the thing, and we'll wrap it up. Is that Votto is an extremely smart guy. He does a lot of what Paul alluded to of working on something. We've seen him change his entire approach. He'll come in one year saying he wants to hit more home runs. He'll come in another year saying he just wants to get on base more. He's been all over the map, and it's worked. Great for a long time. But he's a smart enough guy to know the situation. He knows all these things we're talking about. And he's the last guy in the world that wants to go out there and be given playing time based on what he's done, not who he is now. Okay? He knows the Reds are 4 games out of first. Who knows where they're going to be by the time he's able to come back up. He needs to show some numbers down there. Something. You can't bring up a guy hitting $140.
No.
You can bring up a guy hitting 240. 240 is not where you want to be. But for him to go from 140 to 240, he's going to have to rake for about a week and a half. Right?
Yeah.
So Votto knows. I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves and worrying about this stuff, and but these are the things that go through the minds of Nick Kroll and all the Reds people, even the business side people. because there is a business side to Votto coming back and for the fans to be able to see him play again one more time, right?
And the last thing, too, with that is how many times have we sat here as Reds fans and talked about how much we like Joey Votto and appreciate what he's done for the organization and the franchise over the years and getting them through some of those bad years and everything else and being one of the actual highlights of this team for a long time. Well, maybe you trade him to a contender at the end of his career so he can go win a ring or at least compete for a ring. I'm not saying that the Reds are competing for a ring, but for the first time in a while, the Reds in a long season, 2020, of course, was a playoff team, and then 2021 they were good, but they sold off. Feels like for the first time in a while now you have a team that Joey Votto can come up and be a part of and really maybe be a part of something even from a leadership perspective, whatever it might be.
Yep.
That you're not just trading him away to the Dodgers on a ring-chasing deal just to go and say, it's okay, Joey, you did a lot for us, but the end of your career, go get yourself a ring. Seems like that door has closed. And now you have a situation where maybe you bring him up and the Reds are kind of messing around here with the NL Central.
They sure are.
Casey, what were you going to say?
All I was going to say is pretty much what Trace had already mentioned. And what at bat you're taking away. Like, the development is more important for this team than, dare I say, honoring a guy that's been part of your franchise and been one of your best players in your franchise, because it's all about winning, right? That's all fans care about. That's all organizations care about. And there's other ways to honor those guys than just letting him play one last time at home, which I do think they should do. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's a series or if it's just one game. I do think they should do something, but you can't just have him up here just to have him up here for the rest of the season when he's not playing well. He's not batting well. I hate to say it, but there is a serious chance that we might not see him play at a high enough level to come back. You know what I'm saying? There's that serious possibility. And, my mindset is win. What does it take to win?
Agreed.
And how do you learn how to win? You got to make the tough choices. So this would be a tough choice for them, but I just can't see them bringing up Votto and replacing that batting spot or that starting spot with, when you got CES coming up.
Well, if he comes up. He's not here yet. But, he's certainly making a case to come up. All right, Bucks, lunch is next.
Reed is coming in as soon as we kick this to our infomercial.
Okay. Are we ready to kick
wait. We do have a cherry on top.
We do?
We do.
Presented by United Dairy Farmers. Here we go. We've run long today.
You
got to set this up. Jacob, set this up.
So you saw the putt.
Stop it here real quick before we run the video. Okay.
You saw the putt earlier in the show to win the Canadian Open.
Nick Taylor.
And this is the celebration there at the end. Well, a fellow Canadian golfer decides to run on spraying champagne to celebrate the victory. The security thinks that it's a fan and proceeds to absolutely demolish him out of the shot here.
Adam Hadwin. Boom. See ya.
Look at that form. Get him out.
What a tackle.
Drives him down at the 32. And look at the caddy. He's like, wait a minute.
What a tackle.
I know that dude.
A+ form. That's teaching tape at fall camp this summer, Tom.
Well, no doubt. Look at that. Head up. Head
on the side.
Wrap around. Drive. Through the body.
Feet keep moving.
Finish. Look at this. Finish.
Look at the fall through.
Unbelievable.
That's as good as it gets right there. That's how they teach it down in Alabama.
Absolutely.
Nick Saban, leader of men.
Leader of men.
Undisputed leader of men. That's right. All right, boys. Thank you very much to all. Jacob, thank you. Casey, great to have you back.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome. Paulie, great job.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, time for box lunch. Here we go.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice microphones.
The worst trade of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3 million.
Then I came to realize
anymore.
these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
Scam of the day, scam of the day, dun 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 dun, scam of the day, scam of the day.
Back when this show had some integrity. Back when we had a little bit of, we had a good thing going back. We could still beatbox. We're the best
when
scatting
we worked
band.
hard around here.
Back
when
it
we
was great.
cared.
Back when it was great. Make Box Lunch great again. It is June 12th. This is Box Lunch presented by Betfred Sportsbook. I'm Remouse. Nice to see you guys. And you're right. The pie that I gave Elliot last week was a little soft. I was a little gun shy. I'm not going to lie, guys. I was a little gun shy from the frozen pie that I gave Seho.
To be clear, Reed, seriously did hurt Brandon. So I don't blame you, Reed. Brandon's nose was bleeding for a half hour after Reed did that the first time. So I don't necessarily blame Reed for being a little shy on that.
Right. All right, bring it back to me so the guys can come back in. We got Elliot and Jacob coming back. But, Casey, it is nice to see you back in the office. We had a lot of fun last week, but there was just something missing. So, Casey, I know you talked about it a little bit. Was the honeymoon great?
It was. It was a really good trip. It was a leisure, relaxing trip.
That's how it should be.
It wasn't something that we were constantly going and doing something, which we do have vacations that are like that. We try to balance it, right? This one was to relax and to just soak in some sun and not get burnt with the high SPF, which, by the way, you are correct. It is the length, not the strength of it. But
correct.
Regardless, I put it on every hour, probably more than I was supposed to.
Oh man!
So
you got to get a good base. You did. That was the first thing I saw when I got back. I was like, Casey, you're not tan.
No. And I mean, we were out there 3 or 4 hours every day.
Yeah.
But we were in the morning, which I don't know. I can't remember when the sun, when the UV rays come in the harshest, and that's when you get
1
tan,
or 2
right?
o'clock.
It's probably
And that's probably when we were.
Sun's at its peak.
That's probably when we were walking away from the beach. Is around that 1 or 2 o'clock range.
So you're an early beach person.
Yes.
Because people you're in one camp or the other. You're either the wake up late and get to the beach after lunch and then do the end of the day and you walk off with the lifeguards. Or you get there and you're the first footprints in the sand.
Yeah, we're the first footprints in the sand. We like to be the only people there for a while. It was pretty secluded, but once it got to 12, that's when people started to come in the droves.
And the people like me show
So
up.
there's nothing better than a coffee on the beach. Getting up early, drinking a cup of coffee, and just watching the sunrise or just enjoying the waves crashing when no one's out there. There is nothing better than that. What was your wife thinking when you're on your honeymoon and from 10 to 12 every day, you're just locked into that phone?
Well, I wasn't locked in completely all the way. I was locked in for probably the first 15 to 30 minutes of every day. And if we were late getting up, I was listening to it as we were getting ready.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't mind at all. She was, in fact, wanting to listen. She's a diehard fan of our show, so she wasn't going to miss any time.
Good.
I wasn't going to miss any time.
So you both watched it?
Yeah, we both watched it. We both listened. And, I think you guys did a great job while I was gone. So
thank you, Casey.
We held up the fort best we could. Really did.
And you
We are
guys did a good
still,
job.
me and Paul had a blast at your wedding. We're still trying to figure out who dropped that beer bottle on Dan.
Who
We
dropped
got
that?
some leads.
Did you ever figure that out? We had a
got
week.
some leads, but
I don't know.
we're hot on the case.
We have a victim, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Oh no.
There's a victim in the crime scene.
There was?
Someone
Yeah.
stepped on the glass.
Yeah.
Who?
My sister-in-law.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
We
How old
better
is she?
find out.
How old is she?
She's like,
I'm praying.
she's
for
21.
Okay, as long as it wasn't one of the
No,
kids.
no, it wasn't one of the kids.
I thought it
Wasn't
was
one of the kids.
I was
Oh,
hoping for
man.
real young or real old.
Well, because there was like a 8 or 10-year-old that was running around dancing without shoes on. That whoever dropped that bottle was gonna
Whoever
feel-
dropped that bottle.
You know, she didn't know who dropped it either, I don't think. And she was like, man, someone dropped it. And I was
Well,
just
one of your, well, you know,
You let
someone
you
from
let-
your side did it. And I was like, my side?
You let your sister-in-law know that me and Paul are on the case.
we will find out who did
I
it.
will let her know.
Okay.
Because I think she wants to bring them to justice.
We do too.
So
we do too. We'll find them.
That's all we've thought about for the last 8 days.
Which, by the way, my family was super impressed with your worm. Very
Were they?
impressed. Yes, they loved it.
It's better than the flop.
It was better than the flop.
You didn't see the flop. It still hasn't come out in a while, but the worm is a decent move. The
Flop didn't happen this weekend?
Did not happen this weekend.
Okay.
That's a shame.
The flop,
shame.
Return rates on the flop are 100%.
I've done it twice and it has not gotten one single laugh. Only people wondering if I'm hurt, which is not what it's intended to do. It's intended to elicit giggles. It doesn't get that.
It incites fear.
It's like, is he okay? The thing about the flop is you know who did the flop. Unlike whoever dropped the beer bottle, we're still trying.
Because you're flopped.
Right? Yeah. You see the culprit.
There's
on
no
the ground.
question.
Right. No doubt about it. All right. Someone check the thermostat down in hell because I'm going to say something nice about the Cincinnati Reds, and it is essentially what we already know. Elly De La Cruz is him, and I'm going to ask you guys as Reds fans a simple question because the speed of this guy is staggering. The power is awing, and the size is jaw-dropping of this guy. I locked in on the Reds. I don't watch the Reds a whole lot because, I can't stomach it most days. But he is must-see TV, and the fact that people are talking about the Reds in national media is so cool. The fact that when you go out to, the local saloon, local bar and grill, wherever you go on your nights when you're not watching Off the Bench, getting the recap of that, or Chatterbox Reds, it is cool to see people locked into the game and hearing a buzz about these young guys coming up. And I just got to say, Elly De La Cruz is absolutely incredible. And Jacob, as maybe the biggest Reds fan in the room,
We'll happily take
have
that
you
vote.
ever been more excited for a player than Elly De La Cruz?
Oh, no, certainly not. And I think the second most exciting player of my lifetime and the third most exciting player of my lifetime are right on this team, too. So it's an incredible time to be alive. It's an incredible time to be a Reds fan. First pitch rolls around, and I'm not dreading it anymore. It's not, oh, boy, how much money am I going to lose on the Reds today? It's, holy cow, we can actually beat damn near any team in the league right now.
I love how you threw in a how much money am I losing on the Reds today in the Betfred Sportsbook thing.
Of course.
Because you can't just watch a game.
No,
How
never.
much fun is that? I mean,
Never,
you got to throw some scratch on that.
They're frisky dogs. No, the last time we had like this similar hype around a guy who could do like, it seems like superhuman things was Billy Hamilton. So Elly De La Cruz is like Billy Hamilton if Billy Hamilton was good at baseball and could hit and get on base and all the other stuff.
He's faster than Billy.
I know, that's what I'm saying though. But like Billy had that one play. I don't know if you remember this. It was the same thing. It was a ground ball to first base.
Yeah.
And he had like that weird duck maneuver, and he got around it, got to first. Elly didn't even get to the duck part. He just outran it.
Yeah.
He just outran a routine ground ball to first base, which is superhuman. I can't remember a time hype has been this high around anybody. He's doing everything right. So I'm very, very excited. Very excited.
So Elly beat out Adam Wainwright on that ball to first base.
Yeah.
You know at the Braves games when they do what's the dude that
freeze?
The freeze. Where would we have to start Adam Wainwright in the outfield? If Elly and Adam Wainwright did a race around the warning track, where would we have to start 40-year-old Adam Wainwright in order for him to beat Elly De La Cruz?
No closer than dead center.
I was going to say dead center.
I don't think he beats him.
I don't think he beats him from dead
I'm
center.
not sure. Oh man.
I think like
How far is it from dead center to the right field pole approximately? Like 150 yards?
I was gonna.
No, way
feet,
shorter.
feet,
150
feet.
feet. My bad.
Ellie De La Cruz ran 31 feet per second this weekend. Adam Wainwright probably runs 12 feet per second, 13 feet per second. So, yeah, I think you might have to give him the whole distance.
We gotta do like I don't know how we set this up, but I need to see it now.
They were going to set it up with, remember John Ross, perhaps the greatest Bengals wide receiver of all time. They were going to do it with him and Billy Hamilton. They were going to do a race somewhere, but then they both were terrible and got traded and were cut or whatever the hell happened. But I think if you race Ellie De La Cruz against anybody, it's must see TV, and Ellie will win.
Fastest man alive. He said it himself.
I love how you brought up John Ross. And a quick thing, Elliot.
Yeah.
What about the chestnut checkers move by the Bengals in drafting John Ross instead of Patrick Mahomes, knowing that just a few years later they'll get Joe Burrow and it's just chestnut checkers.
Yeah, that was the plan.
I mean, granted, they might have won a couple of Super Bowls by now, but that's once again why win 2 when you can win 8 like the Bengals are going to win.
I've only ever had good things to say about Marvin Lewis.
Right. It's a good move. Absolutely good move. Is this team? I think Tom brought this up, and I don't remember being a kid. I was only 13 years old back in 2014 or 2010. So there's a lot of things going on in your life. The Reds are not number one in your life, right? Or your team is not number one. Do you think that the buzz around this team rivals and if not surpasses what it was back in those guys were coming up back in 2010, 2012? As you were a young Reds fan back then.
I feel like the talent level, the hope for a competitive team this season is very similar. It's a very similar feeling. It's definitely the first time that I've felt anything like this since 2010, 2012. But I think the long-term hope is different. I think there's just a sense of like maybe this time it is going to be different. Like maybe we are going to keep these guys for a long time and go on a run and become this, perennial franchise that just competes for division titles. I think this is the real first time we've had that long-term hope.
I'd argue the hype is more now because, each year the Reds go without winning a World Series. We just get hungrier. The Cincinnati fans get absolutely hungrier. And I think the hype right now is higher than it was back then because we're more desperate now. And that's the truth.
In the last decade or so, you've seen, Baseball Savant with exit velos and sprint speed and all that stuff, kind of blow up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that certainly feeds into it too. I mean, how big of a prospect is Ellie really if you don't have, exit velos and sprint speed when he's in the minors? Like those numbers being so gaudy is what made this kind of thing swell before he even got up here. So I think that just the accessibility of statistics makes hype in general for prospects in baseball higher. So I think that definitely makes it higher now than it was in 2010.
We're going on 28 years without the Reds winning a playoff series.
Yeah.
1995 NLCS shutout Hamiltonian Mark Lewis with a pinch hit grand slam in that NLCS. But are we getting close to a similar attitude, or are we already gotten there about, Bengals haven't won a postseason game since 1990. Are we there with the Reds? To where whenever they break through, whenever the Reds get back to the postseason, that's the first step, right? You got all these guys up. The next step is to put a competing team, get to the division, or win the division, get to the postseason. And then the next step is you got to win it. Are we getting close to a lot of parallels between these two franchises?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think let's say if this doesn't work, it will work because I buy the hype. But let's say if this doesn't work, then we're worse as Reds fans than the Bengals ever were, because this is kind of like an all-in type of deal.
The chips are on the table.
The chips are on the table. The chips are on the table.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if this doesn't work, I mean, we're in trouble. Big trouble.
You're right, because and this goes back to the point that I made about Nick Kroll at the end of Tom's show.
Yeah,
that he's clearly earned the trust of Cincinnati now, where it always felt like he knew what he was doing, but maybe he was hamstrung by the front office, or maybe he wasn't able, who was making the decisions, whatever. This is Nick Kroll's team. This is the future that he has built. These guys have to pan out.
Correct.
Obviously for him, because if they don't, then he won't be around here much longer. But this crop of guys coming up, it feels to me, and I'm going to knock on wood when I say this.
Sling it.
It feels to me like he has done a good enough job where they almost can't get this wrong. Now, not to say that they're going to win World Series every year, but it feels like, I don't follow the Reds minor league system as closely as a lot of other people do that, like Nick or Jacob, it feels like you do too. But I have started to in the last 3 months of now committing myself to being here and covering this team every day and everything, that I'm getting the vibe that you don't have Ellie De La Cruz's back-to-back-to-back, but to have this Marte kid be there and to have Nick Kirby in the chat say, he's going to be better than Matt McClain, it feels to me like you have enough talent stacked up in the minor leagues to where you almost can't get this wrong to at least compete. Now, from there, you got to win. But this goes back to the point that I've made for years. I've said it a million times. I always said in D.C., they had the same drought forever. The Redskins won in the early 90s. Nobody had done anything since then. In fact, nobody had ever even advanced past the second round of the playoffs in D.C. Caps kept getting there, kept losing to Sidney Crosby. Nationals couldn't get past the first round. Whatever. I always said the first team that was going to get to their league final would be the team that finally won a title. 2018, Caps did that. They got past. They finally got past Pittsburgh. They went on to win the Stanley Cup. First year that the Nats advanced was the first year they won the World Series. Feels to me like you just get that weight off your shoulders and you go on and you do something special because you're playing with house money. Maybe the Reds here, they just kind of keep kicking the can down the line, and maybe they keep winning some ball games, as you say, Reed. Nobody loves the word ball games more than Reed Mouse.
Do I say ball games a lot?
You do.
Ball games is good.
But
Keep
it's
it up.
good.
Ball games is a good play, but you'll notice how much you say that. That's $1 in the jar just for you, though.
No.
Anytime you don't say you're not going to a game, Reed. You're going to a ball game.
Well, yeah. I feel like I say ball player a lot too. I like.
Well, yeah, you do, but that's all.
You got to
It's all the
differentiate
same
between
umbrella.
players and ball players, though.
Well, that is absolutely what I try to do.
100%.
You know what it is, Reed? Your ball games are Dave Lapham's football. Nobody says football more than Dave Lapham. Let's go make a football play. That's a football player. Football. Nobody says football. You go back and listen to the big interview with Dave Lapham. You listen to a Bengals game. Football.
Is it treading on Tom's rights?
Right?
I
don't know. Right?
Right? We're gonna have a right counter one day, and then we'll use it for ball games as well for box lunch. But
before we move on,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead,
want to
Casey.
quickly ask the group in here,
Sling
because
it.
you're the one who made the comparison to the Bengals. Are we, and I've seen this a lot, are we comparing Ellie De La Cruz to Joe Burrow? Are we comparing Marte to maybe Jamar Chase? Or are we comparing any of those guys?
Yes.
How do we want to do that?
So listen, there's not one-for-one comparisons between sports. It's not, often there's not. I know you guys want to do that, but there's no one that can revamp a franchise in baseball quite the way that you can for football. Listen, the best player that has maybe ever played the game is currently on a team with the best player that has played for the past 10 years, and they're just not very good. So one-to-one comparisons between sports is similar to languages. When I was a kid, I never understood why certain languages don't have certain words, and that's just because you develop the language to what you need to say, and sometimes you don't need to say things. So there's not always a one-to-one comparison between languages. High is... They're going to have those amongst all languages, but there's not always going to be a word for the word crabs. If people if their civilization never saw a crab, you don't need to see a word. You don't need to make a word for crab. So there's not always one-to-one comparisons there. So I guess what I'm saying is Joe Burrow, I don't think has a true one-to-one comparison over to the Reds. Jacob, I feel like you think that Ellie is that.
So I actually wouldn't say Ellie is Joe Burrow as much as I would say Matt McClain is. I think Matt McClain's going to be the media face of this team for a while. I think he's going to, be the snippets guy. You saw him with the bubblegum bucket after the walk-off. I think he's going to be the guy. I think Ellie is Jamar. I think Ellie's the flash play.
Oh, my God. I just saw Sir Boy's super chat.
Yeah.
Saying that Ellie is greater than
that's ridiculous.
Joe Burrow.
But, I think Ellie's going to be the exciting superstar athlete player that's going to get nationalized on, I guess Joe Burrow did that too on the Bengals, but get nationalized on the Reds. I think you can definitely draw a comparison between those two and the Bengals. Charlie Goldsmith tweeted it out after the game, a couple nights ago. He said Ellie stealing home there felt a lot like the Jamar Chase streak down the sideline against the Vikings. Paul pointed it out earlier in Tom's show about how this seems like, a turning of the tide for Cincinnati when it comes to watching the Reds and the excitement around the Reds, likening it to Bryce Harper's stealing home with the Nationals. But I think in the city, it's a lot like that Jamar throw from Burrow, because going into 2021, it was Joe Burrow's coming off his ACL, what's this gonna be? And then he does it, first game, first big play, touchdown. It was like, all right, here we are. Ellie comes up, first big moment, game-winning run in St. Louis on a crazy play. Like, we're here. Like, the Reds are gonna be competitive this year, at least for a month or two. Like, we're gonna have a fun July, which is more than we ever asked for.
I love Sir Boy saying that Ellie De La Cruz is better than Joe Burrow, because I didn't realize, I've always said that this city gets drunk on the Bengals. This city cannot get enough Bengals right now. And Sir Boy is drunk on the Reds. And that is, listen, I obviously make a shtick out of hating the Reds. I don't, I can't say that.
Nah, watch your mouth, Reed.
We'll clip that so
watch
fast.
your mouth, Reed.
I can't say that. Everyone I love is a Reds fan. Everyone. And it is so cool that my dad calls me to talk about Reds games. And I don't do the same shtick with him that I do with you guys. I talk to him, I talk it up, I get excited for it. But I do want to pump the brakes on when earlier in the chat someone, I think Paul was alluding that Ellie scoring the game-winning run reminded you of when Bryce Harper stole home when he was a rookie. Yeah. And Sir Boy got on your case about he's better than Bryce Harper. Whoa. Ellie De La Cruz, very well, might be better than Bryce Harper at some point in time. But Bryce Harper, as it seems, is a Hall of Famer. And if you get Bryce Harper level of production out of Ellie De La Cruz, then you got yourself an incredible ball player. Let's not slide. Let's not get carried away here. Let's not do that quite yet. Get excited. Get riled up. But let's not be saying some hasty things, saying some dangerous things out there. All right, let's move on to the next point in the J-Bar, which is this lineup is great. It's getting there, right? All these young players, they're scoring a lot of runs. As everyone knows, the problem right now is starting pitching, which if I would have went back to you in the second week of April and told you, hey, this lineup's gonna produce. We need the starters, the big three to do well. You would have looked at me like I had five eyes, because it was perceived that starting pitching before the season was gonna be the marquee of this team. That just isn't the case. Nick Lodolo is out for the majority of the year. He might come back towards the end, might make it for the last month and a half or so. 5-6 starts. We'll see with him. Hunter Green's been great. And I've been champion Hunter Green because I feel like everyone else is trying to stake their flag, and other players like, this guy's going to be the best. This guy's going to be the best. And I think Hunter Green has shown to be the best, and he's continuing to show to be the best. There are slight flaws in the game, but he's got too much talent. He's been fantastic. But can I ask you guys, are you worried about the future of the starting rotation? This is a franchise that hasn't always been great at developing pitching talent. Part of the reason is, just coincidence. I mean, Luis Castillo was great. Johnny Cueto was great. Homer Bailey was a darn good ball player for years. But ever since Great American Ballpark became a thing, it's been hard to pitch there. Everyone knows that. It and Coors Field are the two most hitter-friendly parks in the league. So going forward, are you worried about the starting rotation? And are you worried about Graham Ashcraft? Are you worried about Nick Lodolo and the places that they have? Because those were supposed to be pieces of the future. I sat here on the show and I said they should extend all these players. Graham Ashcraft, Nick Lodolo, just lock them up and see what happens. Gamble a little bit. You as Reds fans, are you worried about the starting rotation?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. Lodolo has not been good, I would say.
He was great for about 3 or 4 starts, and then
correct. And Ashcraft was kind of under the same thing. Ashcraft's given up almost 40 runs in his last 7 starts, I believe, which is, I mean, the worst I've ever heard. Hunter Green, like you said, has been phenomenal. I don't understand any hate on Hunter Green. That's the most team-friendly contract I've ever seen, and it's incentive-based, which means if he does his job well, he's going to get paid, and we're all going to get rewarded anyway. So that's nonsense. I would have signed Lodolo too, and I probably would have signed Ashcraft, but now I have serious thoughts on Ashcraft. And Jacob, you're a minor league guy. I wasn't big into the minor leagues. Ashcraft was not supposed to be this good, correct?
No, so he basically added a pitch the year before he came up.
Okay.
And he completely revamped his
cutter?
Yeah, he added the cutter in 2021 right before he came up. And he completely revamped, I believe it was his changeup, his second pitch. So the pitcher Graham Ashcraft was coming through the minor leagues is not the pitcher that debuted for the Reds last year. So I think you got to be, I hate to say patient with a guy in his second year that's shown you greatness and now garbage. But I think you got to be patient because the timeline Graham Ashcraft is working on, it really is a 2 year. He's throwing these pitches for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like it's going to take some time for him to really.
How much leeway do you give him?
Yeah, do we send him down to get confidence?
I hate that sending people down to Louisville or sending people down to the AAA now is viewed as this, their career's over. You can't ever send these guys. Why was Tyler Stevenson not down in AAA? We have 2 other catchers on the roster. Let him figure his swing out down there as opposed to in the lineup. Why, before this injury, why wasn't Graham Ashcraft down in AAA? Let him get this ERA down. Let him figure out these pitches when the games that don't matter. Like, I don't know. I think the minor league system is there for us to use. I don't know why we don't use it. Let's send these guys down. Let's let them figure it out.
It's funny you bring up the cutter and how many careers that pitch has made. Obviously, Mariano Rivera threw one pitch his entire career. But I was actually recently talking to a guy who played in the minor leagues last year. He's from around this town, and I was asking him, like, what was the hardest thing about adjusting to the minor leagues? And he's like, dude, cutters. He's like, it's the hardest pitch to hit. You see a curveball, you see shape before you see spin as a hitter.
Right.
So you see that little bounce of a curveball, you see a little bounce of a slider. A cutter just looks at you. And by the time that you recognize the circle spin, it's already cutting in on your hands and it's right in on you. It's hard to see. And that's why it moves away from players. That's why it strikes out. And that's why it induces a lot of soft contact. So I always love when, a guy reclaims their career. There were stories about Jake Arrieta when he came to the Cubs. He was terrible for the Baltimore Orioles. Comes to the Cubs. He learns a cutter. Was Cy Young Award winner. So many careers have been made by the cutter. I just want to know how you throw it.
That'd be great.
It's hard as hell to throw.
Graham Ashcraft's cutter last year was the hardest pitch to hit in baseball. So if he can get that back at a consistent level, I still have the utmost faith in these 3 guys being the top 3 of this rotation. I mean,
really do.
I hope Lodolo's struggles at the beginning of this year was a lingering injury, and I'm gonna hang my hat on that for as long as I can. And I hope he comes back and he's the Lodolo of the year before, who was probably better than Hunter Green, if we're gonna be completely honest. So if we can get 2 pseudo aces in Lodolo and Hunter Green, and then Ashcraft is, what Ashcraft is, hopefully. People are throwing Jake Fraley's name around in the chat. Maybe move Jake Fraley for, a starting pitcher. Move Nick Senzel for a starting pitcher. Kevin Newman's murdering left-handed pitching. Move him to a contender for a starting pitcher. I think there's definitely room to grow, but I'm good with where we're at right now.
I'm ready to make you have an irrational take here. Through 2 starts of Andrew Abbott, would you rather have Andrew Abbott or Graham Ashcraft or Nick Lodolo?
If I'm ranking Reds pitchers right now, it's Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott.
Okay, so
everyone else.
You're taking Abbott over Ashcraft.
But I think I would have.
I think there's been enough.
Abbott Ashcraft would be a debate preseason.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. And while I'm making you guys give takes, let's just go ahead and do something we haven't done in a while, and that's buy or sell. I got about 4 topics for all of you guys, and I want you guys to either buy it or I want you guys to sell it. And I feel like we haven't talked about this. We've done an entire, almost 3 hours of content here on Chatterbox Sports, and this topic hasn't been brought up, which had lingered these shows for a while. It is, you guys buying or selling that Jonathan India will be moved at the deadline?
Sell. They're not moving him. They're not moving him yet. We still have him for so much. We control him for so long at this point. It doesn't really make sense to sell unless you are going all in. If you are going all in, but like everybody just said, they're staying the course. They're not going to try. and they're going to ride the wave. It doesn't make sense for them to sell Jonathan India at this moment in time. So I'm selling it.
I agree. I've said since the beginning, I think the Jonathan India question is a year too early. This is a Noelvi Marte problem, not a Ellie De La Cruz problem. So I think we're keeping him on the roster.
Paul, Case, I'll give my take last.
I like Jonathan India. I'm keeping him.
You guys are all keeping him. Case?
Yeah, I'm keeping him as well because I think he's actually part of the formula to winning. But I would
leader.
Yeah, I mean,
Clubhouse guy.
I'm a guy that believes in character. So
you believe in character?
I believe character has a big part.
He's a high character guy.
I believe character has a big part in professional sports, more than most people realize.
I'm right there with you. I also think that character has a big part in weddings, which is why we're going to figure out whoever dropped that bottle on the dance floor.
We'll figure it out.
One day we'll figure it out. Maybe.
We got some leads. We'll figure it out. We gotta. Someone was wearing tight clothes. I heard. Yeah. Golly.
Probably why it slipped out of their hand.
High pitched voice.
That's
That's all we've got so far.
Yikes. Oh, it shattered the bottle. That's what happened.
Right. Absolutely. I think that they will move on from Jonathan India, or at least I think that they should. And the reason for that is it's just assets, right? Jonathan India as an asset probably will never be higher than this year. Maybe he will, and then that's a good problem to have. But as an asset, it is one that isn't needed, at least not in the infield. And we've talked about maybe he can move to the outfield, and I think as an outfielder, it's not that great of an asset. So I think if you can go ahead and get a starting pitcher or a nice prospect starting pitcher to help bolster the team, help add depth to the team in the areas that don't already have that, I think you should absolutely do that. I think Jonathan India, I think he should be gone. I don't know if he will, but I think that he will be.
I would like to trade Jonathan India. I was selling the fact that the Reds are going to trade Jonathan India.
Okay.
I want him out.
You're gone.
Yeah.
You're good with him. All
Middle
right.
infield of Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain is way too good to pass
Fair
up.
enough. All right. CES makes this team a legitimate playoff contender.
I'll go first. I'm selling that.
Sell.
Yeah. I'll sell that. I'll zag. I know a lot of people will buy that, but I just don't. It's hard for me to say that one person is going to come up and that dramatically change everything.
So you think they're far away from being a legitimate playoff contender? As is.
Well, I just don't. I don't necessarily think they're far away. I'm just going to lean off of the fact that he's going to come up here and immediately make them a, playoff contender. They would need more things than just him to go right.
You could go ahead, Casey.
You go ahead. I'll answer.
I was just going to say that you could make the case that the Reds are a borderline playoff contender right now because they're so many games back in the Central. The Central's bad, and it doesn't look like it's turning around. The one team that you thought could just take the storm and win this division easily was the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's not going to happen. At least not. I mean, they still might win it. I mean, they still might come back, but before the season, it would have been Brewers versus Cardinals. Cardinals probably win the division. We're not there. So you can make the case that the Reds aren't too far away from a playoff contender as is.
I think what's holding I don't need to beat a dead horse. I think what's holding the Reds back is the pitching staff, the starting pitching staff. They have the bullpen, at least at the back end. They have Alexis Diaz. They have the lineup, certainly, right now. Adding a bat to the lineup in CES is not going to hurt it. It's going to make them a lot better. But, again, you're not just going to go out and outscore the other team. And just win 8 to 7 games. That's right. But you're not just – at some point you got to hold the other team off the scoreboard. You can't just rely on outscoring them every single night. And so I think if CES in the form of a arm to the starting rotation was coming up, maybe I'd have another Andrew Abbott. Then maybe I'd have a better time answering that question. But I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that right now. I could be wrong.
Reed said it earlier. The Angels have Shohei and Trout, and they don't win games. So I have a hard time believing that this would also make the Reds a playoff team. I would sell.
Well, they don't have Ellie in CES.
Okay. Are you going to wait? Are you comparing Ellie in CES to Shohei and Mike Trout?
Well, Ellie's the most versatile player since Shohei Ohtani came up.
Okay, that's fair. I'd argue Shohei's a little bit better, right?
One could argue that, yeah.
Yes, I would certainly argue it, so I would sell it. Casey, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, all I was going to say was I was going to cheat just a tiny bit and say that I think him coming up makes them a playoff team, but I don't think they win. I mean, that's what matters most. And getting there,
well,
we've gotten there before,
Well,
but never
let's
won.
walk before
So
we can run.
I would love to get
there. Let's walk before you run, Casey.
Well, that's my point.
You weren't thinking before the Bengals made the Super Bowl that they were a legitimate, like, I don't think anybody rightfully thought that the Bengals were a legitimate Super Bowl.
They were 10-7 and squeaked in.
Right.
And then
I think
all of
that
a
they
sudden
were
went to the
thinking,
Super Bowl.
hey, let's just win this first game.
Let's beat the Raiders.
Let's beat the Raiders. Let's win a game.
Well, that's my point. That's why I'm answering it the way I am. Is just I think that he can get them to the playoffs, but does that matter? I mean, he's not gonna make them winners. So you got to have the pitching figured out before you can start winning. That's all I was gonna say.
Fair enough.
If we're fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the year, if we're going to get shut out in the first round, back-to-back games against the Braves again, I really don't care. I was expecting this team this year to lose 100 games again. Like, the fact that we're even talking about it right now is a massive win for Reds fans.
Right. There were certain pundits in the Cincinnati sports media that were talking about how Reds fans don't even truly understand how bad they were going to be. That guy seems like a buffoon now. You know what? I think that much to the points that everyone else is making, I think that if you know Graham Ashcraft goes back to the form that we saw him in April, that helps this team way more than CES does. But I also could make the argument that they are a legitimate playoff contender, right? You win this series, you do well on this road trip. They've got 9 more games. I think looking at a 12-game road trip, and 3 of the games were in St. Louis, 3 of the games were against the reigning World Series champs. You would say, hey, if the Reds go 8-4, if the Reds go 7-5, that is an absolutely amazing road trip. And they take 2 of 3 from the Cardinals. They go to Kansas City, and now you're like, all right, let's make this a heck of a road trip. Let's come back next week and be a game or 2 under 500. So to answer the question, I am buying that CES makes this team a legitimate playoff contender, if that makes any sense. Just going around, I keep dropping the headset.
Cool.
Final one I got for you.
Okay.
The Reds should extend Ellie De La Cruz right now.
Yesterday. What are the Braves doing? The Braves have done this. They get this little inkling that this guy might possibly be a star, and they lock him into the most team-friendly long-term deal that you've ever seen. They've done it with every single player they have on their team right now. That's how, I mean, not that Atlanta's a small market, but that's this way for a small market team to win.
Right.
Let's lock these guys in. I mean, granted, friend of the program, Scott Boras, had him on a couple weeks ago. Ellie's a Scott Boras client. I don't see there any world where he signs a contract below market value. But if that opportunity is there, I mean, I said that kid that caught the first home run ball should have asked for a decade extension in exchange. The most important thing to Cincinnati right now is extending Ellie De La Cruz, because even if he's not this, perennial MVP, even if he doesn't turn out to be Bryce Harper, which would be such a bad thing, he's putting butts in seats already. Like at the end of the day, you have at least 2-3 years where there's going to be an insane level of excitement every time he steps to the plate in the city. I think you got to lock that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're going to believe in this thing, like everybody says we are, you're going to buy the hype, you're going to believe, you have to buy into it. You bought into Hunter Green, and I'd argue Ellie De La Cruz has significantly more hype on him than Hunter Green. Buy him low, like Jacob said, the Braves do it. That's why the Braves are as good as they are. Buy him low right now. It's going to be, right now, it's still going to be high, but it's going to be the lowest you'll ever see it. So buy him. Buy it right now.
I wonder what Wander Franco's contract was, because he signed that contract really early.
It was like 10 years.
It was like 10 years.
I mean, you could probably look that up. Wander Franco. You guys go. Casey Paul, should we extend?
I can talk if you need to look something up, but I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. I'll buy.
Yeah.
Do it. Why not?
I watched that guy run one time. That's all it took.
That's all it took.
Casey
was in.
Casey was sold.
He hit the damn ball so hard.
That's right, Casey.
Almost went out of the Great American Ballpark.
That's
and he
right.
ran so fast that's in the top 1% of all ML. Yeah, I'm signing him. I'm buying him.
Don't need to see any more. Just solid. Wander Franco is signed to the Tampa Bay Rays till 2033. His big contract kicks in 2026, where he's making $15 million a year, and then after that, he'd make about $25 million a year until.
Go ahead and send that paperwork up to Cincinnati.
Just the exact same deal.
Same exact deal. Pen to paper.
Copy
right away.
and paste.
Buy the Ellie fax. Sir Boy Wonder with the super chat.
Cool.
Love it.
Love it. All right.
Yeah, you got to buy it. You got to extend Ellie De La Cruz. That's an easy one. All right. Are we really going to do this?
What are we doing?
What is this?
What is this?
The hottest take I've ever had is that Eminem stinks. Are you guys pro Eminem fans?
Yeah.
Yes.
I knew it'd be. Eminem is a gimmick rapper, guys. Everyone wants to say he's the GOAT. He's the best rapper of all time. He is not.
One of the greatest lyricists of our lifetime.
Listen, Eminem, when he first came up, was good. I can't deny that. I can't deny that. Was it the Slim Shady LP? I can't recite all of his albums off the top of my head. Jacob, you seem like a guy who could.
Yeah, Revolve, Relapse. All
okay.
Relapse was great.
No, so the Eminem from the late 90s, early 2000s was really, really good. What happened, Curtain Call, those albums, fantastic. Eminem was really good back then. What happened is he got a little bit of acclaim for being able to rap fast. And I think he fell in love with it. You know, like the guy who hit a couple 3 balls in the corner of the gym, and then all of a sudden you're playing pickup basketball and he just keeps pulling the trigger? Every song that I hear from Eminem nowadays is just mumbling. And it's like I know that's what people say about rap to hate on. It's like, oh, I don't listen to all that mumble garbage. Eminem for the past decade, the past 14 years, has just been mumbling. He just raps fast. It's a gimmick. That's all I'm saying is that Eminem gets way more credit, I think, because of the movie. I think 8 Mile had a lot to do with it. I think he came out hot, and I think he came out from a great label. Obviously, Dr. Dre, who came out with all these, found Snoop, found 50, and then obviously Kendrick Lamar. I think Kendrick Lamar is
big Kenny guy.
Kung Fu Kenny is
special.
It's personally maybe my favorite rap. Kanye West is. Whoa. But like in terms of the actual rapping, Kendrick Lamar might be the best.
J. Cole, come on.
So safe to say you're not a fan of Rap God.
No, that's all that. See, Rap God is absolutely what I'm talking about. It is a gimmick. It is the Justin Fields fidget spinner. That's all it is.
Yeah. I like this take. I think this take kind of has some legs. I was pushing back originally, but I don't know. If you're going to talk about Eminem as a whole, as an artist, from about 1999 to 2010, he was pretty damn good.
From 1999 to about 2004, I'll give you.
Recovery came out in 2010.
Yeah, I'm well aware that Recovery came out in 2010. I don't like Recovery. Marshall Mathers LP, Marshall Mathers LP2, Curtain Call, Encore, great albums. But I'm sorry to sit here.
Love the Way You Lie? Come on, Reed.
I love Riri.
How could you not love The Way You Lie?
Love Riri.
Riri's special. That halftime show? Whew.
Didn't move a whole lot.
Didn't need to.
I think we talked about this. Did everyone else have the same experiences? Like you were at a party and you didn't want to be like the guy, like, I think she's pregnant. In case she had put on, like, because we are trained at a very young age as men to never, ever, 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 ever assume that someone's pregnant. They have to tell you that they're pregnant.
Of course.
So Riri comes on and it was pretty evident pretty early. I was like, she's pregnant. But like every guy was just sitting there like, she's not moving around a lot. She dance? Does she normally do it? She normally dance a little bit? What's going on here? So it was just funny that we all had that. I feel like a lot of people had that exact same thing. All right, this show is sponsored by Betfred Sportsbook. So,
I have a confession.
Go ahead, Paul.
So, you know the old phrase, if you can't beat them, join them?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. I'm playing in a golf league tomorrow night.
Oh, no.
Yes!
You did it.
Schmaltzy texted me yesterday, and he goes, got a league, 5:45, Tuesday night. I said, you know what? The swing needs some work.
No.
I'm in.
I don't know why you were out on leagues. Leagues are fun.
I'm not out on leagues at all. They just get in the way when you're trying to play. But I'm in tomorrow night, so we'll see how it
Paul,
goes.
what are you doing this weekend?
I don't know yet. It's a long way away.
$100.
Uh-oh.
Get 2 rounds of golf and a meal.
Oh, I know what you're going
in
to
the
say.
Hamilton City Championship.
I know what you're Yeah, you're right.
Play one day at Potters, one day at Twin Run.
I forgot it's Father's Day weekend. Is your brother going to win it this year?
I don't even know if he's playing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Uh-oh.
So we'll see.
Maybe I'll come for his would-be title.
I was talking to somebody over the weekend that was at the wedding that I was at, and they said they played in the Twin Run Club and said it was a lot of fun. I was like, should I get the sticks out? Get the chicken sticks out? Get back in? I've only played golf one time this year.
Oh,
Get in the Hamilton City.
Elks Run ate me alive. Ate me alive on Saturday. I also hadn't swung a club in 2 months, so because of the leagues.
Yeah, I snapped my club on Saturday.
I saw that picture.
Yeah, I snapped it in half, unfortunately. I had a great front nine, got to the backside, started double bogeying. I think it was like 5 or 6 in a row, and I had enough. I just snapped the sand wedge. It's gone.
Oh, that's
it's
a tough
gone.
club to
It's
lose.
dead.
That's a tough club to lose.
It is a tough club to lose. I was chipping with a 9-iron the rest of the way, so not great.
Going back for the Kirkland wedges?
Yeah.
Hey, don't hate on the Kirkland wedges.
No, they're great.
It's great.
They're great.
And you can snap them without any guilt.
Real quick, speaking of breaking things over your knee, Reed, have you ever broken a bat over your knee? Wooden bat?
No, have you ever tried it?
No.
It hurts.
Impossible.
I would
very,
imagine
very painful.
so.
Like you'll get a crack in the bat. Like you'll hit it and you're just like, it's done. The bat's done. You can't use it anymore. So being a hardo, you pull it on over and like right on the side of the field, you literally like try to like assert your dominance, and everything you got, you just wind up with a bruised leg. Like it does not snap. Like you've got to be very, very strong, and or Bo Jackson breaking it over his head. It's very, very hard, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. Never done that. I have never bought a golf club. I have never bought a single golf club.
What does that mean?
So my brother is really big into golf.
Okay.
Old clubs.
And he just hands me, like he'll go out, he gets a new set of clubs every couple of years, and he's like, hey, Reedy, you want these? Now the problem is I have blades because he's a good golfer and I am not.
Oh,
so it is funny
yikes.
because every time I'll be like playing golf for someone for the first time, it'll be like the 7th hole, and they're like, you got blades? And I'm like, yeah. And they try to do it about as nice as possible. They're like, you're not good enough to play with blades. And I'm like, oh, I'm well aware. I'm well aware what I'm working with here. But I just have literally never bought a club. And
It's not a bad way to live.
I don't know if I ever will. I mean, my driver's from 2004. It's an R5, TaylorMade R5, and they stopped those around like 11, and I don't even know what they're on now.
I think I might have an R5 as well.
It's from 2000.
Yeah.
Yellow back.
Yep.
Yep. It's like from 2005.
Yep.
It's an old driver. And then my wedge has been dubbed what do you call it when you get rusty nails in you? You got a tetanus?
Tetanus shot.
Yeah, they called it the tetanus wedge because the metal is sticking up out of the handle. It's a crafty bag
great.
we've got over there. All right, anyone got a bet tonight? This is sponsored by Betfred Sportsbook. I'm taking the Royals on the money line.
I have maybe my favorite player prop of. I mean, you're the worst. You're such a bad guy. I have one of my favorite player props in the history of player props tonight.
Sling it our way, Big Pimpin'.
Jamal Murray, 10+ assists. Best value I've found yet on the Betfred Sportsbook, plus 165.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. He's averaging 11 assists this playoffs. His last 14 against the Heat, he's had over 12. I don't know. I like it a lot.
I'm going to go, well, see, I hate to spoil it, but I'm going to go Red Sox Rays. The Athletics are hot, but the Rays are still going to beat them. I still believe it. I think the Athletics have won 4 in a row right now.
Mm-hmm.
Rays will end it.
Shout out to beating the Brewers.
Yeah, thank
Sweeping
you.
the Brewers.
I think who'd they beat before that? They beat the St. Louis. They beat the Pirates before that.
Just dominating the NL Central.
That's right.
Good for the Reds.
That's right. And then I'm gonna take the Red Sox as well. So Red Sox Rays, parlay it.
So in true Chatterbox Sports fashion, yesterday I was going to Lizzie's, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to watch pretty much anything all day. So what I was going to do is parlay the Reds and an Ellie hit with Jokic, 30 and 15, and the Nuggets to win the game. Nuggets did not play last night. Nuggets play tonight.
So that parlay is still going.
So the parlay is still alive. Nuggets to win with 30 and 15 from our guy Jokic to seal up the finals. And I'll also take the Reds. Just do the same parlay again.
Beat it back. Run it back.
Yeah.
Case?
I was actually looking at the boost on Betfred, and they have one.
They've got some good boost.
They have one. Luke Weaver over 4.5 strikeouts.
Dreamweaver. It's literally called the Dreamweaver.
Dreamweaver.
And to beat the Royals, I'm tempted to take that. I was trying to do a little more research on it to see where the Royals stand on strikeouts per bat, but I don't have that information right in front of me. I would imagine it's not very good. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going with the Dreamweaver boost.
Dreamweaver. He has a 6.7 ERA. He's the best pitcher with a 6.7 ERA you'll ever see. Last outing wasn't great. He gave up 7 earned. But like the previous, he gave up 3 earned and 5 2/3, 0 earned and 6 1/3, 4 earns and 4 innings. That's, you're just playing keep me in the game pitching. That's okay. Dreamweaver, man. 6.7 ERA is the best 6.7 pitcher you'll ever see.
They called that on the Betfred
Yeah,
boost.
they named it
It's
after
literally
you.
called Dreamweaver.
Okay, so Betfred, your mind, my mind, similar. We both have the greatest minds.
How do we get Zebra Zillionaires on the Betfred app?
book.
Yeah, we'll have to talk. Well, I have to win first.
We'll have to talk with
I'm
Fred.
doing really bad.
We're over.
I'm doing
Well,
really
they
bad.
probably love that. Just
Yeah,
take the donations.
Love the losing. All right, what's for lunch?
We have not done this in the month of June.
Do we have actual options up there, or are we going to
Nope,
do the same
Not
gimmick
yet.
we did last time?
Not yet.
What do you suggest?
Let's
Guys.
throw it all up there.
Put Gold Star as one.
Just one time.
No, we did Gold Star.
Yeah, I know, but you got to do it. He's back. You got to do it again. Gold Star 1.
Oh boy.
Give me a Canes on there for sure.
Yeah, I'd go to Canes.
I would
Chick-fil-A.
kill Canes
Put a Chick-fil-A on there.
I had Mad Mike's Burgers yesterday. On my deathbed after the wedding. And man, oh man, if you guys have not had Mad Mike's Burgers, I don't think Paul's allowed to eat it because they probably cook with peanut oil.
Yeah.
Oh my, it's the best burger maybe I've ever had.
It's called Mad Mike's.
It's right around the corner. Best burger in town.
Put Jeff. Put the Incline House on there too. Incline House. What else can we put on there?
I love the Incline House.
Jeff Ruby's. What other Jeff Ruby's restaurants can we put
Yeah,
on
let's
there?
throw the precinct on there for the one time.
Put it on there once.
What's
and if
funny is Incline House, I'm pretty sure owns the fretboard thing. right?
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it's the same ownership group.
Is Ruby's making the list?
It is.
It did. It
Okay,
did make
good.
the list.
If I have to go,
We're definitely going to.
Can
get
we
Ruby's if it wins.
actually have something that we're gonna go to?
What do you want? What do you want? Chipotle?
Chipotle.
Chipotle sounds great.
Did you put Chick-fil-A on?
yeah,
I did.
We have Chick-fil-A and Canes and Chipotle, which
Oh,
all
I
three
just-
sound good.
I can see right there.
I put in everything that everyone suggested so far.
I like it. Let's just rock with that.
If
All right, let's go.
The blank one is we
No
don't eat.
lunch. No lunch.
Oh man.
Oh boy.
All right. At Carlo and Johnny's. There we go.
Yeah. I gotta go spend $50 on a steak today.
$50.
No.
Carlo and Johnny, you're going.
God, are you kidding me?
Wow, round 1 tough.
That was a tough loss.
That's a big L.
Especially with the way the rest of the board looks today.
Yeah, that's tough.
I'd rather not eat than go to Ruby's.
I think so too.
Wow, that's the stretch. Skyline.
I'd rather
See ya.
I'd rather wait till 5 p.m. than spend $70.
Skyline's been eliminated. That's tough.
We're gonna end up going to the Incline House.
Oh
All
boy,
right, all
guys.
right.
God,
This
we're
is-
in trouble.
we are not looking good right
No,
now.
we're good now. We're back on track.
Okay, at
Well,
least we
okay,
got
All right.
See you, Sonic. Smell you later.
Abraham saying this wheel sucks. Yeah, I agree, Abraham.
I agree, Abe.
I agree.
This wheel needs more punishments on it.
Golly.
Pie to the face.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there basically are 3 slices of no lunch on here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's enough slices.
Oh no.
That one hurts.
I mean, we're only
The
working
two
with-
options
we-
that are still there are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we only have.
We only have 2.
This looks like the nuclear wheel.
All right, get that
All
out.
right. Back on track.
So it's even right now.
What are we doing if the final 2 is Jeff Ruby's and no lunch?
Well, it looks like we're not eating.
That's basically no
Pretty
lunch.
much.
Texas Roadhouse close enough to Ruby's.
All right, we're
All
good.
right.
Big. This is big for the
We're good.
program.
All
I
right.
don't
good
think
spot.
we're out of the woods yet, guys.
No,
we're
we
not
still
out of
have
the woods
one
yet.
big old wedge on there.
Still big for the program.
Oh, I should have made it red.
Should have.
Oh, no.
All right, it's coming down to the final
man.
wheel.
All right, I'm going to switch it to red.
Oh,
So that-
no.
So we don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, switch it to red.
Chipotle or no lunch?
Oh, come on.
Please.
It's not gonna let me. It's not gonna let me choose it. Sorry.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh,
All right,
no!
Oh, we're going. We needed
thank
it.
God, I forgot. We're
Jason's been out for so long, and I thought we were eliminating it. All right, good. We won.
So good.
And we're honoring the wheel.
And we're honoring
We're honoring the wheel today.
So we're going to go to Chipotle for lunch. We'll be back Wednesday for box lunch. Tom will be back tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is sponsored by Betfred Sportsbook. I'm Reed Mouse. This is the Chatterbox crew. See you on Wednesday.